Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the governing board for the Deer Valley School District. Today is Tuesday, January 24, 2023. I call to meet the order at 7:02 p.m. Let the record reflect all the board members are present. If you are able to stand, please do so and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Orway?
One of our counselors lost her husband last week, Deb Sinatra. So I just wanted to mention that so we can keep her in our thoughts, and for anyone else that is going through a loss, and then we can also celebrate some things that are new. So I just wanted to mention that.
You may be seated. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adopt the agenda. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Did we get 5? Okay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Aye, over here. Okay. Now we're moving to our district reports. For district reports, we have gifted services. Dr. Galligan and Dr. Solit will present.
Good evening, President Paperman, board members, Dr. Finch, and guests. This evening, Dr. Amy Sulit, Gifted Services Manager, and I will present information on Deer Valley's K-12, actually pre-K-12, gifted services.
Good evening, governing board members. Hold on. Oh, even closer. Okay. Good evening, governing board members. It is an honor to sit before each of you tonight to share key aspects of Deer Valley's gifted pre-K through 12 gifted services continuum. As you will see, Deer Valley is quite responsive in meeting the needs of our gifted and talented learners. Please accept my gratitude on behalf of all of our students who currently enjoy gifted programming each and every single day, thanks to your leadership. So many of us in the audience today or watching from home may be wondering, what is giftedness? What are gifted services? While there is no one universal definition of what it means to be gifted, there are various characteristics that support our understanding. Dr. Francois Gagné defines gifted as the possession and use of untrained and spontaneously expressed natural abilities, often referred to as aptitudes or gifts, in at least one ability domain, either intellectual, creative, socioaffective, and perceptual motor. Fortunately, the state definition has narrowed this down a little bit for us to include 3 vital areas: verbal, quantitative, and nonverbal. Gifted services are so vital that the state of Arizona identifies them as being an integral part of the regular school day. According to our state definition, our gifted learners need appropriate gifted education services to achieve at levels commensurate with the child's intellect and ability. This is strong phrasing that speaks to the developing our students' aptitude of current abilities. I'm here to say that in Deer Valley, we do just that. We meet the state's requirements by identifying students for gifted services when they score at the 97th percentile in each of the 3 state-mandated areas: verbal, quantitative, and nonverbal. In order to truly meet and support students' aptitude and abilities, we provide gifted services for students who score at the 95th percentile. Next year, we will provide gifted services for students who score at the 94th percentile and higher. But we don't just stop there. In order to truly address the uniquely diverse student needs in our district, Deer Valley Gifted Services utilizes a research-based approach known as local norming. Local norms find advanced students hidden in plain sight. Local norming is offered at each of our Title I schools to ensure students from diverse backgrounds are represented. Within this approach, students at our Title I schools qualify for gifted services with scores at or above the 80th percentile. But does it really matter? Are gifted services really necessary? To answer this question, we reflect upon what research tells us regarding key differences between high-achieving learners and gifted learners. Bright children tend to enjoy the traditional pathways and structures related to school. Bright learners often interact with their age-level peers seamlessly. They learn with ease and perform at the top of their group. In contrast, gifted children tend to prefer adults. They love to learn the skills and standards that are motivating to them. Notice on the list where it says initiates projects. It doesn't say finishes projects, because our gifted learners have a habit of completing just enough of the project to gain intrinsic satisfaction. Their version of done may not match the teacher's version. Another distinct difference between bright learners and gifted learners is the amount of time it takes for them to master a skill or standard. Bright learners acquire mastery within 6 to 8 repetitions. Gifted learners are able to master a skill in 1 to 2, and actually, it's 0 to 2. You see, without a designated gifted program taught by a trained gifted endorsed teacher, our students may spend much of their day waiting. We know that boredom is a habit. It represents learned behavior. Within the classroom, a gifted learner who is bored may go unseen, potential unnoticed and underdeveloped. In the classroom, this may look like daydreaming. Alternately, this may present itself with high levels of activity. Gifted learners often demonstrate a high activity level. Their minds are always busy and their bodies seem to follow right along. Gifted learners frequently question rules, routines, and traditions. At times, they may even be disruptive. In Deer Valley, we emphasize teacher training and support to ensure that our gifted and all children receive the academic and social and emotional supports that allow for whole child development. Critical elements of gifted classroom instruction include flexible grouping, differentiation, continuous progress, peer interaction, and continuity. I'm here to share with you that each of our DVUSD gifted programs includes opportunities for flexible grouping, differentiation, continuous progress, peer interaction, and continuity. DVUSD Gifted Services is proud to offer such an extensive list of gifted programming to our students and families. We currently have over 5,000 students participating in DVUSD gifted programs. This year, we launched the Gifted Pre-K Academy at Las Brisas to provide developmentally appropriate and enriched learning opportunities for our youngest scholars. This feeds into our Bright Beginnings program, continuing into first and second grade at Las Brisas. In addition, many of our campuses offer SAGE content replacement in ELA and math. We offer 3 Renaissance programs for highly gifted and advanced learners at Canyon Springs, Highland Lakes, and Las Brisas. Next year, we will open Hillcrest Middle School's Renaissance program as a continuation of the Highly Gifted Academy at Las Brisas. Each of our K-6, K-8 schools utilizes the cluster grouping model as a base of gifted services. Gifted services extend throughout the middle and high schools. In Deer Valley, we are proud to provide a full continuum of gifted services that range from grades pre-K through high school. At the K-6, K-8 level, we offer a rich tapestry of offerings to meet the needs of our gifted and talented learners. Gifted services range from our base, the school-wide gifted cluster model, and may include one of many specialized supports, ranging from the Spark enrichment model with various options related to ELA and math content replacement. At the secondary level, Deer Valley continues to meet the needs of our gifted and advanced learners through rigorous programming options. Opportunities for advanced academics at the middle school ensures that students work through complex material at a pace commensurate with their abilities. Students at Norterra Canyon have the opportunity to participate in the International Baccalaureate Middle Years program that continues through Barry Goldwater High School. The IB program encourages students to think critically and solve complex problems. The IB program is a globally recognized program offered by roughly 150 countries across the globe. At the close of the program here in Deer Valley, students may earn a specialized high school diploma and certificate. With the wealth of career and technical education offerings and dual enrollment opportunities at the high school levels, our DVUSD students have a myriad of options to explore their academic interests and passions. In addition to supporting our students, Deer Valley Gifted Services Department offers a variety of resources for our families and communities. Our DVUSD Gifted Services website provides parents with information and resources tailored to meet the gifted learner's needs. Our DVUSD Gifted Parent Portal includes resources and articles providing supports in the areas of ELA, math, enrichment, social and emotional learning, and more. Gifted Services also publishes a quarterly newsletter to share the latest trends in gifted education, gifted parent strategies, and details regarding gifted program and testing updates. Well, as you can see, there is a lot to celebrate in DVUSD Gifted Services. This year has been a banner year for all things new. From myself being new to Deer Valley, to a handful of our programs, we are continuously evolving and revitalizing our programs. This year, we launched the Gifted Pre-K Academy at Las Brisas Elementary. We welcomed 16 students to our program who received developmentally appropriate and academically rich learning opportunities. The emphasis of our program is hands-on play, inquiry, and creativity to support students' acquisition of learning. Bright Beginnings provides an enriched learning environment for our youngest scholars. Bright Beginnings Kindergarten is offered at 3 of our schools: Canyon Springs, Highland Lakes, and Las Brisas. The Bright Beginnings Kindergarten launched at Las Brisas Elementary this year, with additional offerings in grades 1 and 2. Las Brisas has truly embraced all things new this year. Yes, they have. Las Brisas launched its Renaissance Highly Gifted Global Studies Academy this year. Next year, the Global Studies Academy will continue to Hillcrest Middle School, where students will have the opportunity to apply learning concepts 1 to 2 years above grade level. Students at Hillcrest Global Studies Renaissance Academy will have the opportunity to focus on universal themes explored from multiple perspectives. Hillcrest will build upon their rich history of excellence in meeting gifted learners by emphasizing the close relationships within their current 7th and 8th grade core teams. As you can see here, Renaissance students at Hillcrest will enjoy a robust course offering with the opportunity to participate in electives, including their new Model UN. In addition to their astounding course offerings, as you see here, Barry Goldwater launched their first IB Leadership Summit, geared towards supporting gifted and talented learners, as well as those within the IB program. Students participated in multiple seminars geared at supporting their leadership potential. Local community experts donated their time and resources to make this impressive event a reality, presenting key themes related to career success, building a resume, creating positive culture, and much, much more. But we aren't stopping there. Deer Valley Gifted Services is committed to visionary leadership that meets the needs of our gifted and talented students today and tomorrow. In order to meet the needs of our culturally and linguistically diverse populations, Gifted Services stepped up to the plate to increase our offerings of gifted testing. Assessments such as the KABC 2 New and NAT and NGATE are specifically designed to remove cultural and language barriers that may prevent our students from being seen and identified. In order to increase our outreach of services, DVUSD Gifted implemented universal blanket gifted testing this past winter for our second grade students. In so doing, this allowed us to identify over 400 students for gifted services. Offering consistent and reliable testing opportunities in the fall, spring, and summer ensures that our students and families are able to access gifted services throughout the year. We recognize that our gifted programs are only as impactful as the teachers who work with our children each and every day. As you saw here tonight in Deer Valley, we have the best. Our gifted educators possess and are actively working on their full gifted endorsement. In order to ensure our teachers' success with meeting the needs of gifted learners, DVUSD Gifted Services offers regular trainings and professional development opportunities. One of our new programs this year is the Gifted Endorsement Cohort, which provides the opportunity for our teachers to earn a full Arizona Gifted Endorsement free of charge, in-house, within 2 years. And let's not forget the need to support our parents. Being a parent of a profoundly gifted learner, I understand on a very personal level the need for parent training, resources, and supports. As a result, Deer Valley Gifted Services is proud to offer quarterly gifted parent seminars and resources located on our gifted website. Communication is an essential component of our success in gifted services. We realize that we are unable to meet the needs of gifted and talented learners without the communication triangle of home, school, and DVUSD Gifted Services. We encourage open communication and look forward to communicating with you via one of our many platforms and communication tools. Thank you for supporting our students, teachers, and families. We continue to meet the needs of our gifted and talented learners because of you. I look forward to our future communication, and thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments, board members? Ms. Orway.
That was a really complete report on our gifted service, and we continue to go forward. I just have one more question. Do you have, at the top of your head, the amount that the state is compensating our gifted students? Dr. Galligan?
President Paperman, Ms. Ordway, we can get that amount. I can tell you that it is not as much as we would want to support this program, but we'll put that in the next board update.
It's never enough, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? I have, Ms. Fisher? Good, okay. I have one question. Will you be able to explain to the public how gifted students are identified in order for them to be part of the program?
Thank you. Absolutely. The state mandates that we provide gifted testing at a minimum of 3 times per year. So per the state requirement, we identify students for gifted services at the 97th percentile. Being in Deer Valley, going above and beyond, we dip down now next year to the 94th percentile. Having this state mandate in place, we utilize those gifted assessments to indicate placement.
Thank you.
President Paperman?
Yes.
Also, students can recommend themselves for testing, teachers can, administrators can, parents can. So as long as you want to be tested, and it's within reason, there are 3 times during the year that students can be tested, and in the summer as well.
Ms. Fisher? Thank you.
I don't know if you have the answer, and if not, I can research it, but do you know at what point where they started identifying the gifted versus, the trouble? Because the kids used to be identified as trouble because they were just bored. Would you remember what year or around what time they started really identifying gifted students?
I would say that the younger we can identify.
So, go ahead. Best practices indicate that we want to identify our learners at a younger age. There is a sweet spot for that. Typically, it's somewhere between end of kindergarten and second grade. And the reason for that goes back to the slide I shared with you on capturing the bored learner. We do not want a student sitting in our classrooms unengaged.
Right. No, and that's awesome. We're doing an awesome job at that from everything I see here. I was more wondering when the change went to identify the gifted versus just the highly, because they didn't, okay, I'm old. They didn't have gifted kids. Well, they did, they just didn't identify them. So I was wondering the history behind it, if you know. If not, I'll research. I was just curious. I don't know why it hit me.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, just let me see if I can understand. You're looking for research that indicates when would be the best time to identify children for
No,
gifted
because you guys
services.
are doing great. I mean, historically, like,
Yeah,
Yeah, when did we start?
education has changed.
right.
At some point, someone said, hey, we need to identify these kids, 70s, 80s. When did that change start occurring, if you know? And I can research it.
I can tell you for Deer Valley, this is my 35th year,
Uh-huh.
and gifted services in Deer Valley was going strong when I started 35 years ago. However, it was really limited to K-6 for the most part, with some AP courses at high school, and that would have been 35 plus years ago.
So the growth's been going for a while. That's what I was asking, kind of the progression of gifted services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we are moving to public comments. Ms. Fisher, please read the anonymous, sorry.
There's an actual paper.
Oh, there's 9. Okay, I'm not, the public comments, and can you please call the speakers? There's 9 speakers. Okay.
Okay, if you want to start lining up, and then I'll read. We have Scott Lannon, Wendy Matei. Thank you. Kendra Ement, Cindy Lundy, and Linda Slavic. And we'll call the rest after those. The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing the name and address, topic, and hand in to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers within the 30 minutes overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disparaging personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona open meeting laws, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any item not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticisms made by a speaker. Ask staff to review a matter or ask that the matter be put in a future agenda. And since there's only 9, you will have 3 minutes each. If you could step to the speaker and state your name.
I'm Scott Lannon. Members of the board, like I said, my name is Scott Lannon. I am a chemistry teacher at Sandra Day O'Connor High School. I've been in district. This is my 19th year in Deer Valley School District. I come here tonight to talk about standards-based grading. I will say that when it was presented to us in the beginning of 2 falls ago, being an old teacher, I was not very excited by the fact that we were going to change how we we're grading our students. However, by February of last spring, that had completely changed. And I found that the new grading system was exactly what I kind of had hoped it would be. I found that my students were excelling where they needed to. When I issued grades at the end of the semester, I found that the grades that I saw were equivalent to the previous 24 years of my teaching experience. I have not seen a decrease in learning from my students. What I have seen, or what I did see last spring, was students that are still striving to do their absolute best that they could in my classroom. What was brought to the board in July from Dr. Galligan, I thought were some of the most perfect tweaks to our system that we possibly could have had. Asking for us to have decimal points in our grading system, asking to widen the grade bands. I was so excited when I saw that presentation before that board meeting. And to be honest with you, I was so disappointed when I walked away from that board meeting and we realized that all of that was thrown away, that we changed to, we got to have letters, we need to have percentages, and things have changed. And it's not the same as what it should have been. The tweaks that were put into motion by the board that night have not helped standards-based grading in any way, and in fact, has made the process even in the decline, in a decline within itself. I wish that we could go back. I wish that we could go back to the tweaks that were shown. I wish that we had decimal points, and I wish that we could widen those grade bands out. I wish we could get rid of percentages and letters, because that would make that standards-based grading back to where it needs to be. And to be quite honest, that would be a perfect spot. I've invited the previous board to come to the school. I've invited you to come and talk to me. I haven't seen anybody yet. I'm hoping that maybe at some point we can. Okay, but that would be a good start in how we could maybe take ourselves back to where we need to be. Thank you.
Go ahead and step up and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Wendy Matei. Good evening, board members. I'm not good at speaking in front of adults. I'm really good at speaking in front of kids. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Stetson Hills. I teach science. Before that, I taught 8th grade science, still at Stetson Hills, and I'm actually here to talk about standards-based grading. I don't have a speech prepared because, again, I'm not good in front of adults, so I'm going to kind of wing it. I'm concerned. You may remember my son. He was Leo Matei. He was the young man that came up, had graduated from O'Connor, and he kind of shared his problems that he had with standards-based grading. The problems that I see, and I worry because my 8th graders that I had are now juniors and seniors, and I hear a lot. They come back to me to talk to me. They're worried about consistency. They are very not sure what is a 3. Percentages are always dependable. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think that the idea of knowing that you have a mastery of a standard is not wonderful. That is great. But percentages are what we live by. My son is now taking college classes. He tells me, he comes home, he goes, I feel really bad. The O'Connor kids ask, how many times do I get to take the test? And the professor looks at him and goes, what? I don't want our kids that we have worked. I love my students. I love them so dearly. I want them to be successful. And I am concerned that we are sending them off. We want them to be lifelong learners, and we're sending them away with probably not the best skills. Yes, we want them to master it, but we also need them to understand the percentage side of it, because when they get to college, those percentages matter. It also matters that they understand it, but they need to know what's a 93, what's an 84, where do we stand? And I have a feeling that sometimes when we get into, I know we have the rubrics, but I still feel there's gray area. My son mentioned this to you. He went to a few of his teachers, like, how do I fix this? Where do I go? There weren't any answers. I'm hearing that from many of my former students. They don't know what to do, and I feel helpless. I can't even direct them in the right way to say, yes, this is how you fix this. I think there might be a way to put the two together, that they still have the percentages and they still master the standards. We've done that at Stetson Hills since I started. It's a great way to see it. They say, yep, I got it. Yep, I got the grade for it. It's a good way that they get both ends of the scale and they can go off to college and know, A, they're successful with mastery, but they also understand what a percentage means so that they don't look like a deer in the headlights when their professor looks at them and goes, no, you can't take a test 3 times to get an A. So again, I'm here speaking for students that I love, and I hope you take what I have to say into consideration. Thank you very much for your time.
Go ahead, next speaker.
Good evening, board. My name is Kendra Met. Multiple studies confirm SBG remains largely unverified. Many guidelines exist that a larger opinion based on general research. Several studies show no evidence to indicate that SBG improves student achievement or it's superior to other grading policies. SBG does not compel teachers to focus understanding, to transfer knowledge, student learning goals, or standards. The SBG policy is inconsistent due to varying and uneven guidance. Without precise definitions and clear criteria for judging effectiveness, SBG causes uncertainty, confusion, frustration, and resistance to learn. The lack of consistency and varying rules by teachers, department, or subject matter inhibits meaningful understanding and clear communication. In a study to obtain an understanding of student resistance to SBG, Buckmiller Townsley conducted. The students were concerned particularly inconsistent procedures. Secondly, students had grading concerns such as less A's, viewing the 4-point scale as limiting, the students not testing well. The study also found that standards-based grading would have negative impacts on students' preparation for colleges. I think I grabbed the wrong speech. Anywho, a study by Spencer May Westerberg analyzed 18,000 public high school students' grades that were using SBG over a 3-year period, concluded that students received A's. They were decreased both the second and third year. The numbers of B's saw a significant increase. Similar changes were seen in an increase of C's, though more drastic. D's and F's decreased slightly compared to traditional grading. The decreases in the letter grades of D's and F's were beneficial to the school. However, there were also less letter grades of A's. A study by Brookhart states that criteria must be communicated clearly using accurate and reliable information. Grades cannot be explainable until those who use them understand what they mean. To be effective, any grading policy must be clearly understood by students, their parents, and have community buy-in successful. Over 100 years of research evidence supports this notion. A study by Townsley Varga examined the relationship between student GPA, ACT assessment scores within the standards-based system compared to traditional grading system. The study observed a significant difference in all categories. English, math, and composite ATC scores were significantly higher for students with traditional-based grading, not standard-based grading. Colleges use these scores admittance to determine SBG can negatively affect students' GPA and state test scores to the point of obtaining acceptance and scholarship opportunities to universities. Another study by Guskey, Townsley, and Buckmiller found that students that are part of a standards-based system in high school can experience effects in their transition to college-level education. There may also be psychological effects to students within standards-based grading systems. Confirmed by Lewis in a study examining 750 students that experienced.
Hello, my name is Cindy Lundy. I'm a parent and a teacher in the district, and I'm here to once again voice my concerns regarding SPG. The concerns still remain after all of these meetings. I've been approached by many teachers and parents from around the district who have heard previous speeches and listened to these meetings before, and they're in full agreement with what we are saying. They're in full force against SPG. Please understand that the teachers and parents speaking tonight represent a significant amount of teachers and parents in the district. At parent-teacher conferences this past October, I had parents asking if this was coming to my school and told me that they are vehemently against it because they'd spoken to parents from other schools in the district and heard their struggles with it. My school is a phase 2 school. We had to change our grade book this year so that 99% is assessment and classwork, which is labeled in progress, counts for 1% of a student's grade. The teachers in the upper grades who I've spoken to, this affects say the same thing. If an assignment is worth 1%, most students are not doing it, or at least not doing it well or to the best of their ability. It doesn't have an impact on the grade. It creates lazy students who waste class time and don't do their work outside of class because it doesn't matter. Then when it comes time to test, they take the test and surprisingly they fail. According to SPG guidelines, students can take the test over and over again, as Mrs. Matei said, as many times as it takes in order for them to pass. How is this teaching them real world skills? I believe that it isn't. It's just a reminder that as well as my school, like Mrs. Matei said, we already have standards on our report cards, and it's wonderful. We can look at different subjects, different skills from each subject, and we can assess the students using the number grading system. Then in addition to that, we have the percentage grades, and they go together beautifully. And parents never look at really or ask about the standards in most cases, but they sure do care about the letter grades, and so do the students. If you change this over to a fully numbered system and take out percentages and letter grades, students will lose motivation. We've seen it happen at schools that have this fully implemented already. The numbers are arbitrary and immeasurable, as seen in my own students' experiences with the program. If a student has an 89%, he or she will work hard to get to 90 so they can earn the A. We also have citizenship grades, so the issue that was constantly pushed about behavior impacting grades is actually a non-issue for us. Please keep in mind that this district has lost teachers and families solely based on the fact that they do not agree with SBG. As a teacher, they didn't want to change to a system that is confusing and that they simply didn't agree with. So they retired early or got a different job. Families have fled DVUSD for charter schools, private schools, or other districts that don't use SBG. Please do the right thing and vote SBG out of DVUSD for the good of all children and the families that we have the pleasure of serving. Thank you.
Before you start, let me call the remaining. So we have Darlene Pope Turner, followed by Tony Bowie, Christina Rogers, and then Becky Smith. Go ahead and state your name for the record.
My name is Linda Slavic, and I've been teaching in the district for 28 years. Dr. Finch, President Paperman, and governing board members. I teach at a school who is supposed to implement standards-based grading next year. I have asked friends at other schools who are currently using standard-based grading for advice, and they told me to retire. They complained how time-consuming it is. For instance, I teach 5th grade and don't departmentalize. So I have 28 reading standards, 17 writing standards, 41 math standards, 12 science standards, 29 social studies standards. This results in 127 standards for 5th grade. Now times that by my 30 students, and I have a grand total of 3,810 standards. I wonder how to track all of these standards for all of my students and be able to prove to parents their child's grade of a 1, 2, 3, or 4. This is a huge task that will burden teachers, which will cause teachers to burn out and to quit. Also, I have heard complaints that standard-based grading is too subjective. Every teacher will grade and use their rubric differently. School to school will also not be consistent. Teachers have had a similar issue of grading writing consistently. I was told that most kids will get a 2 or a 3, and it's difficult to get a 1 or a 4. My school has not even started using standard-based grading, but parents and students have expressed concern to me. Parents are worried about GPA, scholarships, and their kids getting into college. I am blessed that both of my girls already graduated and received scholarships. Another concern is that students are smart enough to figure out that they are getting points for not doing work. This isn't standards-based grading. It is passing kids who do little to no work and setting them up for failure. Some kids are just doing enough work to bring their grade to a passing grade. My school is using traditional grading, which is we are using percentages as well as letter grades, and we are giving 1, 2, 3, or 4 on standards. Just like an earlier Stetson Hills teacher mentioned, we are doing both and it works great. We use PLCs, goal setting, data folders, look at standards, write common formative assessments, and we allow retakes as well as corrections. We can use all these important practices without standards-based grading. I am representing a group of teachers who are too afraid to speak up, but feel that standard-based grading is not the best for DVUSD.
Hello, my name is Darlene Pope Turner, and I'm a teacher and a parent in the district. There are many concerns and problems with overhauling our entire grading system to SBG. There is continuous push by administration to implement it, even after our board asked for a pause. Many of these concerns have been brought up meeting after meeting by parents, teachers, and our own board members. Every teacher I speak to thinks it will be a mistake. Why they do not come and speak in person is beyond me. They have grave concerns and many complaints. I encourage all who are listening online, please voice your concerns in person. Not one peer-reviewed study that SBG increases student learning has been presented, perhaps because there are none and it won't. According to Welsh 2019, SBG remains largely unstudied. Quote, no facts, only opinions. A grading system that only assesses grades on a 1, 2, 3, 4, with 100% of those grades being assessment, will not increase student learning, but rather make every week like a standardized test. The reasons that we've been given and that you can find everywhere online to implement SPG is that students will no longer receive grades for behavior, attendance, or bringing in tissue boxes. No joke. Who does that? Letter grades with percentages is a better barometer, as everyone said, on how a student is doing and offers teachers more flexibility to reach every learner. Students will go the extra mile to get an A and win an award. SBG will have 100% of grades based on assessments that students can take over and over again. All other work is in process and not counted towards the grade. How on earth does that motivate a student to apply themselves like they do in the real world? SBG will demotivate our students and therefore decrease student learning. This is already happening in our schools. I've listened to many parents' stories on how their once A+ student is no longer putting in effort, just not motivated. Here is some research that I found. A study by Peters, Krause, Buckmiller, and Townsley, 2017, found students had grading concerns such as seeing less A's, viewing the 4-point scale as too limiting, students not testing well and wanting their work done on homework to be graded. BD 2013 discovered this to be the same case as well. Students acknowledged that they were not self-motivated with completing work they were not receiving credit for. This study also found a concern of negative impacts that standard-based grading would have on students in preparation for college with social concerns, specifically that students were feeling more stressed, trying to keep up with deciphering their grade, feeling unmotivated, and needed more clarity in what they needed to do for improving. You've been hearing that over and over again. They concluded there were just too many challenges with SBG, and including an inconsistency amongst teachers and students with many misconceptions. I teach American history, and the United States of America was not built on by low motivation and mediocrity. Thank you.
President Paperman, Board, Dr. Finch. My name is Tony Boo. I'm a student in the school district. I'll be fairly quick. So there are a few things that are worse than uncertainty. And I can think of businesses and countries and people don't work well in uncertainty. I run a business, and if you have policies that are misconstrued or aren't consistent across employees or departments, it causes chaos. So there are children that are doing their level best to get certain grades and do certain extracurricular activities to give themselves an opportunity. And that's pretty much what kids want, people want, is an opportunity. And what you're doing right now with this experiment and moving the goalposts in the middle of the school year, which is happening right now, is causing chaos, it's causing confusion, and it's making a lot of people upset. So here's an example. I have a student, my daughter is in Boulder Creek, a junior or sophomore, and on 9/14 of 2022, the teacher emailed and said, hey, hello, students, parents, and guardians. This year, our school changed the grading policy to not give zeros when there are missing assignments, instead of giving a 49%. And they went on and on about standard-based grading. It went away. They kind of pulled it back because at the time, the board was having all these discussions about standard-based grading. So on 1/6 of 23, the teacher emailed again. For spring of 23, we're implementing a new grading policy that we are piloting in the sophomore ELA class. Highly proficient, 100, proficient, 85, so on and so forth. I responded on 1/12 of 23, and I said, I've read your new grading scale, and I noticed that it looks like standard-based grading. There's 16 schools in this protocol, and I don't think Boulder Creek is one of them. Can you give me clarity? She responded One day later, hello, Mr. Blue. BCHS is a phase 3 school for standard-based grading for now. Full implementation will be next year. Well, I didn't sign my daughter to be an experiment, right? It's not what I signed up for. So there are 3 things this board can do. 1, create certainty. Put a flag on the ground and vote. Let everybody know where you stand. You're not going to make everybody happy, but that's okay. But people will respect you because you took a stand. 2, make public on the website and be clear what schools are in it and what phase they're in. No guessing. Don't let people figure out, hey, you're in it. A teacher responds, I'm in it. No, just make it very clear. And the last thing is hold people accountable for whatever flag you put in the ground. Hold people accountable. Don't let them run off and do something different because they're just disobeying you. It's called insubordination.
Hello, my name is Christina Rogers. I have a nephew who attends Sandra Day O'Connor. I also have a godchild who is a teacher in the Deer Valley District, and I have a few friends in the Deer Valley District as well as teachers. They have all came to me. They are actually afraid to come and speak up because they're afraid for their jobs. Some of them are in the phase 1 and are refusing to do it because of the stuff that they feel is going to do to their students, the damage that is going to do. So they're refusing to do it. And I have some that are in phase 3 that are literally thinking about quitting because they don't even want to start the standard based grading. So I really, really encourage you guys to take a look at the teachers who have to implement it, the poor kids who are your experiment for this, and stop it. You guys need to put a flag in the ground of not doing this. You're damaging our children and it's unfair. If they are going out to a job, they don't get to try 10 times to get that right. They get one time, 2 times maybe, and they've just lost their job. We are doing such a damage to our children because in the real world, you don't get 10 times to do something. If you takes 10 times, you'll lose your livelihood. So I encourage the board to do what is best for our children. They need to learn the way the world runs, not this coddling crap, because when they get out, they don't get coddled anymore and they need to learn it now so they can be successful in life.
I'm short. My name is Becky Smith. I just had a comment. I think it's great that Deer Valley had so many gifted programs when I was watching that gifted slideshow. I think it's gifted kids. You need to keep them engaged and challenged, and I fully believe that all kids should get instruction that is tailored to their needs, whether they're gifted or struggling. There's no real place for a one-size-fits-all approach in school, but I am confused on what I saw in the slideshow. From my understanding, the criteria for gifted was different depending on the school's SES status, which I did not understand. It stated that above the 80th percentile is considered gifted in Title I schools, and all other schools, the criteria is above the 95th percentile. For me, that makes no sense because I don't know how SES has anything to do with determining a child's giftedness. Why would that factor in the qualifications of being a gifted student? The definition of gifted should be the same across the board, regardless of what your school's SES status is. Um, I don't understand why there's a difference. Gifted is gifted, period. There should be a line that everyone follows the same rule. From what I've heard, this kind of is a similar concept in the standards-based grading where, there's leeway and a lot's left up to teachers' determination. That's why I feel like it's a terrible idea, along with what you've heard tonight. I do also know some teachers who don't like it, but don't want to speak up against it because right now you can't speak against things or you get, flack from whether it's peers or administration. So they're not coming here to speak against it, but maybe there's a way to do an anonymous polling of teachers and find out that way because they don't want to put their name on things. I feel if it does get implemented in the district, you're gonna have to worry about losing teachers to other districts or maybe charter schools. Right now, charters are a big competition for public schools. I deal with people with preschool age children, and they're always asking about schools. And I can tell you the majority of them are choosing charter schools, and this is going to fuel that competition even further. People are going to run to charter schools if they feel that this type of grading is reducing student achievement and motivation to do well in school.
Let us move on to item 5, consent agenda. Mrs. Fisher, can I get a motion to adopt?
I move that the board accept administration's, well, no, sorry, I don't have the motion. I move that we accept the consent agenda items A through J.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay.
Aye.
Motion passed. Oh, yeah. So motion passed, 5 board members say aye. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6, employee professional development.
Let me just get it.
And this is for the action part. Is there a presentation for this item?
Let me make a motion first.
Okay.
I move that the governing board approve all employee out-of-state travel for professional development per governing board policy GCCE.
Second.
Any presentation for this item? Any comments? Okay, I don't hear any comments. All those in favor say
Aye.
any opposed say nay. 5 votes. Okay, motion passed. Moving on to approving addenda, pre-approval. This one is for Mr. Miglorino.
I move that the board accept the, do we not have a motion on this one? Yeah, we do. That the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
There's no presentation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay. Okay, I don't have mine on here. Oh, finally. Okay. Okay, aye. Okay, 5 votes. Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on to preview items. Oh, for number, where are we? Oh, for this. Are there any discussion for the approved addenda pre-approval? Oh, we did. So no, we're up to preview. Preview, that's what we're up to. Okay, so we're up to preview. We are moving on to preview. Our first preview item is Governing Board Policy KB, Parental Involvement in Education. For that, we go to Dr. Galligan.
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch. You asked to have this brought back as a preview item. It is brought back to you as a preview item, and it is different than the one that was presented in January. Denise Lowell-Britt has worked with us to look at this particular policy. You also asked that in some manner we identify where areas of the ASB policy KB indicated statute. What you'll see here is I have linked for you each of the House bills and the statute information as it relates to policy KB. If you look at the strikeout red underlined policy, you will see that there are areas in there that we accept and areas that we did not accept. In some cases, Ms. Lowell Britt identified where there was a section that was in another policy, for example, the indication about library books. Another one was the policy for sex education. We left those in there as they are related to information about parental rights. If you would like further information on that, we can take it back to Ms. Lowell Britt and take a look at very specific language. In most of this, we are looking at 15102, and that is what gives us information about parental rights, in addition to the House bills. So when you look at the preview of this policy, you can see what we've struck out, the words that we have changed, and where we have shifted in areas of this policy from what ASBA gave us in the policy advisory. If you look at the last couple of pages, we shifted up information about parent questions to a campus, and we moved it up in earlier in the policy rather than at the end. So this is Deer Valley's recommendation. We are not recommending ASBA's version. As you can see, the copyright symbol has been crossed out as well.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Carver?
Dr. Galligan, thank you for all the time that everybody spent on reworking this. I appreciate that. So if I understand you correctly, on page 1 where it starts off with purpose and it's all in red, that has been struck out. So the proposal originally was for those words to be included, but we're striking that we're not going to include those words. Is that correct?
President Paperman, Mr. Carver, Ms. Lowell Britt felt that it was redundant information. There's a number of areas in here that she considered redundant, and in many cases, we followed her direction. In a few, specifically to there are 3 areas in there that refer to sex education. We kept those in, even though they were potentially redundant from one of the more wordy sections.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Any other board member questions? Ms. Fisher?
Okay, so if it's red with red, they wanted it and we don't. If it's black with black, it's, what, did ASBA want that out?
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, if it is in red, that would be a change made to the previous 2021 policy KB, or it would be a change we made. So for example, if you look at page 2, we changed letter D to E, letter E to F. So we made some of those changes, and instead of saying a procedure, we changed it to procedures by. So those would not have been ASBA's changes, those are changes we made. However, if you look at the first page, the area in red under purpose and outline of policy KB regulations and exhibits, those came to us from ASBA. After a review with Ms. Lowell Britt, it was determined that that is redundant information, and we struck that out. If it is in black, that is the language that was in the 2021 policy KB.
Okay. So was it redundant, or does it contradict? Is it just redundant?
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, it's redundant.
Okay. So on page 1, we have the top part that's redundant, and then you have your definitions added by the district or by ASBA or by the attorney.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, actually, ASBA put that in there, but it is in 15102, and you can read that also in the House bills.
Okay. So moving on to page 2, you already told us you changed the D and E. C and D, was that added by us or was that added by ASBA.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, that was added by ASBA, and that is also part of the new statute.
Okay. We have a small blurb on the top of 3.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, we added that. That is something that Denise Lilbrett felt would be appropriate in that section.
Okay. That's kind of standard. So on page 5, we have number 19, the right to access, all written. Is that an ad of ASBA or an ad of ours? And then right below it, we have the redactions.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, again, after speaking and working with Ms. Lilbrett, she felt that the language in 19 with red underlined was appropriate, and we struck what was there. However, you will notice that where the strikeout access to the Arizona Department of Education, DOE, if you go down to the very next page, you will see that we have added parent access to DOE statutory handbook of parental rights, and that same information is listed there. Again, when we were looking at policy KB, we tried to make it so that it flowed in a logical manner and had headings that made sense to any of our community members, internal and external, as they were looking at this particular policy.
So the words you have written, this is a breakdown of the references that they're making.
That is correct. They were in the previous policy KB.
Okay. Then we have the redactions. And that's just the additional that ASBA was recommending, correct?
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, are you talking about the optional language?
Yeah.
That would have been from ASBA,
Okay,
yes.
we're just redacting that option. Then we get down to page 9, where we remove the superintendent or principal shall, and the request for information is denied. So the guidance.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, if you'll go back to page 6, and I'm just going to hold it up so you can see it.
Okay.
We shifted that section under this strikeout, which was 19, and all of that information is now listed in that area, and it's called Procedures for Requesting Parental Rights Information. So that is cut at the end of the policy where ASBA had it, and we shifted it up in earlier parts of the policy.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear that certain parts are not being removed for the public, because some of the parts are very important, and that happens to be one of them. I am a little concerned on page 1 where we're removing the purpose and the outline, and I know that it is redundant. There's a lot of redundancies in a lot of our policies, and part of the reason I'm concerned about removing that is it sets our community and our parents on a fishing expedition. Because even though it's in another policy, I navigate through ASBA policies because I've been doing it for 12 years. So I had to look up stuff, and so you get kind of accustomed to doing it. But when you're a parent and you're trying to look at something, or you're even a little stressed out because you're trying to figure out what the policy is, or it's fortunate. I'm old. I don't worry as much. My kids are grown. Now I worry about my dogs. Well, I still worry about my kids. But a parent who's in a panic or trying to find out stuff, this leaves them on a fishing expedition. The policy is still valid with or without this top portion. But I just, for my board members to consider, is that we're here to serve our public and make it a little easier for them, not add additional hoops. And I just think leaving that information, is it redundant? Yes. So long as it doesn't conflict with another policy, If you have conflicting, that's where the concern is. I would prefer leaving that portion in. That's just my personal opinion.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, everything that's recommended or referenced in here are either the regulation or the exhibits. Not every, but most policies have regulations and or exhibits, and they are not referenced like this in the policy. And I believe that's why when Ms. Lolbrett and I talked about this, is that this is not what is typical in policies that do have regulations and exhibits. When you go to Deer Valley's policy, you are directed directly to the policy, and then immediately after that are any of the regulations, and immediately after that are any of the exhibits. You don't have to search because they are really attached to that policy.
Right, but one of the big concerns that I've received and asked, and honestly, I never really gave it much thought, is our community often is confused. Well, what is a regulation? Well, what is, and they think everything that is up on there is adopted by the board, and it's not. Only the policies are adopted by the board. The rest is added. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. Most times we don't. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes. So, I mean, it does stand with or without it. I understand the additionals, but that's just my opinion.
Thank
I
you.
do appreciate you moving some of it into a more logical place. I do think those are very good moves, but I do think it's important that the public can see that those are still in here. Because that is the question that we get is, hey, this is gone. They need to see that it's not. So that's all my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Hopefully in the near future, the school board will have board retreats and we can review policies, and if there's any questions, we can work with the district. We're going to move on to our next preview, K-12 social study curriculum resources, materials adoption recommendation. For that, we go to Dr. Galligan and Ms. Namara.
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening, Ms. Colleen McNamara, our extraordinary social studies K-12 curriculum instruction and assessment specialist, and I will share a preview of the K-12 social studies adoptions committee's recommendation for resources and curricular to be implemented in the 23-24 school year and an additional 6 years afterwards. Colleen?
Good evening, President Paperman, members of the board, and Dr. Finch. I am very happy to be here this evening after a very lengthy process bringing you the results and recommendation of the DVUSD Social Studies Adoption Committee. The goal of recommending new resources for adoption is to support all teachers and students in their ability to meet or exceed grade level proficiency targets in history and social science standards, with disciplinary skills and content literacy, preparing students for secondary and post-secondary opportunities. High school graduation credits, if you don't know, for social studies are 1 credit for world history geography, 1 credit for American history, including Arizona history, 0.5 for government, 0.5 for economics, which shall include financial literacy and personal finance management. Also, in order to graduate from high school or obtain a high school equivalency diploma, a pupil must correctly answer at least 60 of the 100 questions listed on a test that is identical to the civics portion of the naturalization test used by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services score. Currently at a 60 out of 100, which will move starting in the 2026 graduation year to 70 out of 100. And then just to give you a little background, in 2018, new standards were adopted for history and social sciences. That's what they term social studies, so you know, if you hear that. Keeping the historically included civics, economics, geography, and history standards, but also adding disciplinary skills and processes. These are inquiry elements and critical thinking skills which need to be incorporated into those content areas. We put out a call to form a committee right at the beginning of September of this year. The plan was to recruit a well-rounded committee made up of our interested parents and community members, along with teachers and campus admin from across the district, representing general education, English language education, special education, and gifted education perspectives. The K-12 Social Studies Resource Adoption Committee was widely publicized. Requests for committee members were posted on district websites, sent out in emails on Blackboard and Peachjar. Flyers were distributed to all the K-8 middle school, high school campuses to advertise the formation of the committee and review of materials. And then these flyers were also available at the district office, posted in the case outside, and I know I saw it posted in some of the Facebook groups, communities, because my friends mentioned they saw my name pop up there. So we had a lot of submissions to be part of the committee, which is wonderful to see so much civic engagement. Everything about the social studies adoption is always found on the social studies webpage of just dvusd.org, social studies adoption 22. Applications for the district committee participation remained open from September 1st through the 21st for all stakeholders to apply if they were interested. This committee was charged with looking at all materials the vendor sent in, reviewing them based on our Arizona state standards and the curriculum guides that we currently use for best instruction for DVUSD students. These materials were narrowed down to just those the committee felt were best to meet their expectations. And once this was concluded, the semifinalist material in all grade bands was open for public review. All the feedback was collected and used to determine these final recommendations we're bringing for you today. Due to the overwhelming response, as you from the number up there, we wound up conducting a name-picking lottery for parents and community for the K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and high school grade bands. I videoed myself and posted those on the adoption webpage also. Members who were selected were notified September 23rd, 2022, along with the information to everyone who participated about the timeline that materials would be open for public review. Teachers who submitted to participate were chosen by teacher grade level, and then care was given to make sure that a variety of the high school feeder regions were represented and socioeconomic considerations, title, different pieces like that. The committee teams were created with about 2 teachers per content level and 5 parent community members in the band, so that K2, 3, 5, 6, 8 high school. So there were about 12 people in each group. This allowed the teachers to give some background and answer questions on current materials and things that they were looking for, and then for parents to be able to ask questions to help look and evaluate possible choices for the future. The committees met in a Zoom meeting online format in 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the evenings. And hats off to everyone who showed up because it definitely was a huge undertaking. The Zoom format was chosen just really to allow committee members to attend all the meetings, even if they were ill or they had to travel. We wanted to try to get the same people at every meeting. And then next slide, you can see this is the breakdown of the committee members by band. Community, parents and community, which are non-district employees, and then teachers, admin from across the district. So we wound up having 46 members in total to lead this off. Our timeline. So just to give you a little breakdown on what this looked like. In meeting 1, we met and reviewed our social studies standards, went over how they work with the current adoption and materials, and then the teams took time to look at our current curriculum guides that are hosted live on our DVUSD webpage, discussing how materials are used in the classroom in alignment with state standards by unit, and that they're always visible to parents and our community. Teams then looked at the committee adoption rubric and broke into groups in discussing revisions or clarifications to the rubric. In meeting 2, the grade band teams worked using the rubric to score all the different vendor resources, reviewing standards, materials, videos, supplements, along with thinking at it as a student approaching the materials and a teacher. The teams got to see the live scores as they scored all of their materials and then sat and discussed, asking questions, parents, teachers, to each other. With the scores and data entered at the end of the meeting, we narrowed down all of the vendor submissions to what we called semi-finalists. And these were the people that we wanted to see vendor presentations from in the third meeting. This actually, I should have budgeted more time because that definitely was not enough time to have, and many parents and teachers worked kind of extra in their own time, just continuing to review and look at all of those materials. Meeting 3 came the vendor presentations was a 2-day process. Committee members were sent the schedule of time and asked to join on the grade bands they represented. After the vendor presentations, the teams quickly polled by 1, 2, 3 for their choice for finalists. And then we took those finalists, and that's what we opened for public review from November 4th through January 2nd. There was a Google form provided to track those submissions. It was on just vendor grade, a 5-point Likert scale measuring pieces of the material, and a yes, no to recommend for adoption, along with a place to leave comments and feedback. And then meeting 4, where teams met, reviewed the public feedback in their grade bands, and made a best choice, which is what I'm bringing you today. Just to give a little bit of background on how we sent out for public review, very similar to what we did during the committee process, but all of these curriculum materials were made available. It was published on the district website, DV Voice, Peace Jar, flyers posted, school marquees, even communications with teachers and administrators. All of these images, it's the same image, that's why I put it up there, were sent out, flyers. Let's see. These flyers were also available in the district office, posted in the case outside alongside images of the website. Everything, again, is directed back to our social studies adoption webpage. I also emailed anyone who applied to be part of the committee and might not have made it a couple of times, just to let them know that the public review information was open so that they could give that feedback. And just a quick view of what it looked like. The adoption webpage gives the viewers all of the adoption information, was consistently updated throughout the adoption process, including the link to look at the current content area curriculum guides, along with the linked curated resources and materials listed by unit. For the public review, people could click directly on the link to the resource and see the resource, putting in the demo username and password. They could download PDFs, and a separate Google form was used to capture feedback. All of the materials were posted online because there's a lot of additional resources and materials that are not just a hands-on textbook. And I know personally, I participated in the last adoption and we missed those extra pieces, so I wanted to give the public and everyone else an opportunity to see all of the videos, assessments, document-based questions, primary sources, hands-on textbook itself, the e-reader, inquiry materials, journals, research materials. So that was for providing it online. The public review, so we had 127 evaluation forms submitted. 116 were teacher admin responses. We had 11 parent responses. And for meeting 4 with the committee, we went through all of the data that was scored, comments, and everything else. I banded the data together just to help them look at the different grade bands, but then I encouraged them to also please look through all the data there. And they were encouraged to discuss and come together on their choice for board recommendation. Over the past several years, teams of teachers have developed all of our K-12 social studies curriculum that aligns with best instructional practices, aligned with our new Arizona state standards and district curriculum. The current social studies adoption licenses expire at the end of May for 4th through high school. And as you can see, that's the previous adoption year, which was way back in 2015. And we renewed it instead of starting at adoption 2 years ago because of everything that was going on at the time. But the committee, with their input from teachers in the community, are recommending the resources to support their teachers and students based on these points that you see here. Oh, sorry. We have not had an adoption at K3 since 2005. As you can imagine, that's been a point of contention. And it is a definite concern, and I am bringing that part of the reason we're bringing that today is to solve that issue. So that being said, we have so just some background on the current social studies standards, which were approved in 2018 and fully implemented across all classrooms in the 2020 school year. The new standards required a shift in instructional practice for all K-12 social studies teachers, including updating materials for the new standards. In DVUSD, we embarked on a 2-year implementation plan in the fall of 2018 to support teaching and learning with the new social studies standards. There are 21 anchor standards taught K-12. These 21 anchors are taught in grade bands and built on each other as the school year progresses. Having materials to support these shifts and teaching of these new standards has been the focus of these district committees over the past few years because our resources did not provide those materials for these new shifts. I've curated and reviewed many open education resources, videos, teachers' lessons, resources, both online and off, and built them into our curriculum guides to support teachers with the standards. And those are the things, that's why I publish my curriculum guides online so that we can see those materials. And this is the fruit of our labor here. Full K-12, as you can imagine, is quite a lot. Here is the recommendation from the Adoption Committee for K-12 Social Studies. The committee selected all of K-12 with McGraw-Hill resources and including a supplemental OER, which means Open Education Resource, with the Arizona Council on Economic Education. And I'm gonna provide a brief overview of those resources. These recommendations for resources will have a very large impact, K-12, including that K-3 group that's been missing in social studies over the course of the 7 years. And so this is gonna take us, hopefully, all the way to 2930. And so you can kind of see the breakdown of student licenses, teacher, how many students over those years. McGraw-Hill K-5. The K-4 Arizona Impacts Social Studies content is organized around chapters of study that are focused on essential questions, such as how do our government and its citizens work together? The essential question guides students toward unpacking those core concepts of each chapter. Each lesson guides students through unpacking historical concepts and discovering unique perspectives as they answer lesson questions and analyze a variety of high-quality primary and secondary sources. In the Arizona version of the 5th grade Discovering Our Past, primary sources are embedded throughout the narrative of the student edition. For each source, they're found within an inquiry journal in the resources online and in person. The primary sources are authentic, with many providing multiple lexile levels to support all student readability levels. The chapters begin with analyzing primary source features that include those primary and secondary sources, text, maps, graph, political cartoons, historical photographs. Students will analyze the sources and answer the document-based questions. The final step in the analysis, what will you do, challenges students to consider the real-world implication of their analysis. These questions can be assigned through a lesson by the teacher. The students will be able to fill out answers online. Students can see those, or in the cases before the student submits the assignment back to the teacher. One of the biggest feedback pieces I have heard over the course of my job over the years from our current K-5 teachers is the desire for an in-person text resource. So the K-5 teachers and students will have access to both digital content and print textbooks in their classrooms. There is also a wonderful consumable inquiry journal for K-5, which teachers will be replaced yearly. It's a consumable resource. This resource gives the essential question, walks students through the chapters exploring content, analyzes the source documents, engages in the evidence, and uses specific concepts like cause and effect to record details, organize their evidence, and build and write student answers. These resources fit perfectly with our social studies standards and can be easily used alone as assessment of standards or as student practice by the teachers. Having this digital licenses will also allow students to listen to the text, change the lexile, and then for our online students or students who need to be at home they can also utilize it that way. For the supplemental support piece, if you're not familiar with the Arizona Council on Economic Education, they're a nonprofit that provides free professional development, teacher and student programs K-12. They provide free workshops, in-services, and webinars to all Arizona schools. Their curriculum is based on our 2018 Arizona History and Social Science standards because they're an Arizona group. And it is a supplemental resource for teachers because it really focuses on the economic portion of our standards. Many of the elementary ACEE resources tie the economic standards to children's literature. Lessons are curated by ACEE and have those concepts in lesson directions, materials, procedures written and explained. Many come from the Federal Reserve Banks of St. Louis and Philadelphia. These teacher lessons are all housed in Canvas, and it's free, again, for teachers. They provide the resource for the student. ACE will provide the training, and the lessons also connect to all of our Arizona storylines in the standards. So they're built specifically for kinder, first grade, second grade, and on. And ACE launched a new program called Smart Path for first through eighth grade through MidFirst Bank, which is another way for getting economics lessons, higher financial literacy learning with our students. And then I just posted these are from the public comments. This was anyone who recommended yes on the resource from K-5. So I just tried to pull a variety of parent, teacher, grade level, just to take a look at. Also, I included the link to this. It was in the board docs. There's a full resource of just all of the information that came with this. But this is just a quick breakdown of, in the very far right, the public review score, which is the one on the Likert scale out of 5. And then I put the content area and also how many standards that it covers across. So just some more data and information. For McGraw-Hill 612, this program is research-based social studies aligned to, again, our 2018 history and science standards. The McGraw-Hill Social Studies resource is based on the C3 framework, which stands for College, Career, and Civic Life. The intent of the framework is to connect the content and skills of the social sciences through history, geography, economics, and civics to the tools used by a student historian for analyzing sources, understanding context, gathering evidence, drawing conclusions, creating arguments, and taking action. Similar to the K-5, the inquiry journal for 612, students will be able to explore those essential questions, develop secondary questions. There are abundant opportunities in each lesson, as well as in the inquiry journal, to be enticed by compelling questions, have them develop their own questions, and learn how to draw conclusions and communicate about them. The lessons guide students through appropriate steps necessary to evaluate sources and use evidence to support their answers to the questions. The McGraw-Hill textbooks ask students to engage with the overarching questions of history as they consider multiple voices and points of view through primary and secondary sources over time period. Every inquiry concludes with a take-informed action activity to highlight their relevance of history to life today and to teach students that they can become active citizens now. Just like the K-5 resources, all digital licenses and access are available online and are auto-rostered through PowerSchool. Sixth grade will receive the student bundle of in-person textbooks and a yearly consumable inquiry journal, in addition to the full digital access for both teachers and students. For 712, digital licenses and resources are provided by the McGraw-Hill platform and can be utilized in our LMS Canvas platform. This includes the digital ebook, inquiry journal, primary sources, assessment materials. As an added bonus, McGraw-Hill is providing the Read Anywhere app, which is access for grades 6 through 12, and it will allow students and teachers to access their textbook and work offline. This will work with their district Chromebooks from the Google Play Store and iPads from the App Store. Students will also have access on their personal devices. They can download the app. Similar to the K-5, same program, the Arizona Council for Economic Education. These materials and lessons are laid out in grade band. Many of our students participate in the student programs already, with a good example being the stock market game at both middle school and high school. I believe you see Mr. Vettner at Boulder Creek has one recently, along with Mr. Pondy. The different programs and resources in ACE provide another way for students to attain their skill for personal finance as they choose to use that for graduation. It is an easy way to make connections for teachers and students, how economic concepts are laid through all content areas, not just social studies, math, and ELA included, and science. Again, everything is open education and free. Teachers just need the training provided by ACEE on how to use the teacher materials, and by having these materials officially adopted, we can add them in the best place for them to be taught in our district curriculum guides. And again, I just pulled some reasons for comments on the yes for 612. And I just put both slides because I knew how, if I tried to put all 612 on one, it would be really small. So again, you guys can see that other link that's in the board doc that has all of this, but just here's 6-8, and then again for our high school ages, where the scores wound up. So investment in partnership with DVUSD over these 7 years from McGraw-Hill. All of these are the K-5 and 6th grade bundles with 7th, 12th digital only. Professional development opportunities will be available for all teachers in this late April and May, pending approval. New teachers to DVUSD will also be trained in July or in August. Our partnership with the Arizona Council for Economic Education, why they're helping us with professional development. They will continue to do so and work in partnership with us if they have in the past, including during our January 2nd Professional Development Day. Both Teresa Mungai, who's the Director of Teacher Programs, and Kathy Pondy, Director of Student Programs, ran different sessions to highlight these teacher curriculum materials and how to use them with students.
The resources presented align well, as you have heard, with the Arizona History and Social Science standards. Over 34,000 students in grades K-12 and over 1,000 teachers will benefit yearly from these social studies materials, integrating digital, in-person, and hands-on components. The K-12 social studies adoption, including tax and shipping, will be just over $3,386,400 and some change. And this is within the budgeted amount for curricular adoptions in the 22-23 school year. If approved, we will submit an order by the end of February with the plan to start the curriculum teams working and the K-12 teachers being part of the process to align the new textbook and supporting resources into our current curriculum guides. McGraw-Hill will try to deliver all of the hands-on teacher materials by our PD training and in-person student materials to the schools as soon as we can label them in Destiny and send them from the district warehouse to our schools. Our official start date of digital licenses will turn on by July 2023 once Power School rolls over and campus rosters are connected for the start of the school year. Professional development will be delivered in August again to all new teachers to district, new to profession, new to Deer Valley. The resources will be fully implemented in the 2023-24 school year and beyond. We appreciate the board's time and attention to the Social Studies Adoption Committee's recommendation for our Social Studies K-12 resources. If approved, these materials will be provided to teachers for implementation next year and the following 6 years. As mentioned before, professional development will be provided to all teachers. That includes how to access materials, as well as the expectation that all teachers should utilize district-adopted resources and district curriculum that the board has adopted for all social studies courses. We will bring the K-12 social studies adoption back to you as an action item at the February 14th board meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentations. Any questions, board members? Mr. Carver.
I want to thank you for doing an amazing job, including as much of the community as you did. I think we had a huge response, and that was awesome to see. I remember sitting in the audience when Inspiration Mountain received its colors and its mascot and all that fun stuff, and they had 800 responses for that. And I'd like us to set that as something to accomplish. Whatever it is that they did, we need to try to get that kind of excitement in the community when it comes to curriculum. Because these folks have done a lot of work. You've done a lot of work. We've spent a lot of time looking at this curriculum. McGraw-Hill is an amazing company. They've been around forever. They've been a good go-to. But now that everybody's done all the work, of course, parents that didn't get to participate are starting to look at the information and sending concerns. And I'm just, without getting into the mud with it, I just want to say that I think in today's environment, it's important that whatever curriculum that we adopt, regardless of the specific category, that we choose sources that are going to phrase things in a manner that will be inclusive, um, taking everybody's viewpoint into account. There's things in some of the AP books that we're looking at that, just for example, we use COVID as an example. It says specifically that if you chose to not wear a mask, that you were showing off your independence and your basically your freedom, right? Um, but also in the same token, if you didn't wear a mask, you basically, if you wore a mask, you were doing it for the common good. If you didn't wear a mask, you were exercising your freedom. So by default, they're basically saying that if you didn't wear a mask, you didn't care about anybody else, you were selfish. And I just think in today's environment, if it was enough of a concern for a community member to send that example plus about 6 others to me, I just think that we need to hold our suppliers a little bit more accountable. The book, I imagine if they printed it, is pretty thick. They could have taken an extra couple of sentences and just worded it differently. You know, they're talking about everything from George Floyd to BLM to President Trump and COVID in these books. And I think that they should really take the time to make them less potentially controversial. I mean, we're kind of in an environment now where no matter what you say, you're going to, pardon my French, you're going to piss off half of the crowd. But I think we need to do our best as the center of the community to make sure that we're as inclusive and don't go down the rabbit hole of taking curriculum on that could possibly offend and really make people wonder where the school is with our thoughts on those things. And that's not what social studies is. Social studies is a simple representation of the facts. History is a fact. You know, it shouldn't be slanted. So, again, your group did an amazing job. I just wanted to share that with you as something that we should probably keep in the back of our mind. It's hard. I mean, we got 24 books, so many resources that you can't count them all. There's no way that anybody's going to be able to read it all. But I just wanted to make that call out and commend you for all your efforts. Thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Ms. Fisher?
Well, I was going to ask if you had any negative complaints. I'm off the hook. They sent them all to him. I didn't get any. But I do agree you did a good job at I watched you on your poll of, you know, selecting people and pulling names and whatnot, because there really was a lot of people, because then they were contacting me. And I'm glad. We need to have our community members, our parents, we need to get them awake. They need to get active, all parents of all types, because these are their kids and they matter. Two things I did see in the comments, and I just wanted to get a little bit of clarification. I did see a comment about being able to have printed materials or being able to print materials. One of the things working with people who have ADHD like myself, one of the techniques that I used to get through school, through college, was I read it into a recorder and then I reread it while listening to it to be able to, I don't know why that helped me. And so I've worked with some young adults that have needed help with reading comprehension and things like that. And that's the method we used. Am I understanding that correctly? They're going to be able to print some of it out, so if it's a harder spot, they can do something of that nature?
President Paperman, Mrs. Fisher. Yes, that comment actually came from one of our kindergarten teachers with the consumable. They were curious if they could, instead of walking all their classes through opening the consumable books, could they just print one of the pages out and just be able to hand out the pages? But yes, we can print materials, and even with the new resource, they can actually they can for special ed or anyone else, they can cut down on some of the material that's on the page. Also, they can customize it for their needs of their students. So
Now, when you say they can cut down, they're not, is there a kind of a fine line where we're not going to just cut out some serious content?
yes, President Paperman, Mrs. Fisher. Yes, it's more the reading lexile level.
Okay, okay. Because like I said, there's just methods that you use that,
Correct.
you know, rather than medication. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? So I have a question. So we're going to have social study K to 12. So on the schedule, there's going to be a time, a block for social studies. Will the teachers also have a chance to do, for example, interdisciplinary units where they can take social studies reading, the social studies to read like in a reading block, or writing, social study within the writing block?
President Paperman, as noted in the presentation, this particular resource has children writing. It also has children, opportunity for children to be linked into our current literature. So this is an amazing resource that is interdisciplinary, as well as bringing in all the primary and secondary resources for children to analyze from the youngest grade levels all the way up through high school. Colleen, would you add anything?
President Paperman, so if I'm understanding, we already encourage our ELA teachers as they're using their resources in ELA. Some of them do overlap into social studies, and yes, they can pull those resources into social studies, where we have them focus on the standards of social studies while maybe reading the same passage or text at the grade level, from their grade level they might have read in their language arts class, especially at the younger grade levels. But I will say for social studies, all of our inquiry standards, they lend themselves to building that literacy piece. So now we have them writing even more nonfiction, tying in with what's happening in ELA, tying in what's happening with science. So it's more and more. Yes, we have them as standalones, but they do all benefit each other and can be utilized that way.
And President Paperman, I would also add that the Open Ed Resource, ACEE, really does build nicely economic literacy as well as financial literacy, again, from our youngest grade levels all the way up, that has not really been formally placed in our social studies curriculum and adoptions before. So that's another tie-in to that idea of interdisciplinary connections.
Thank you. This is great. Thank you for your hard work. We're going to move on to our next preview item, K-12 Music Curriculum Resource Materials Adoption Recommendation. For that, we go to Dr. Gallagher and Mrs. Backstrom.
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch tonight, the amazing Anna Backstrom, our Music Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Specialist, and I will share a preview of the K-12 Music Adoption Committee's recommendations for elementary, middle school, and high school music curriculum resource materials that would, again, be implemented in the 23-24 school year and beyond. Anna?
President Paperman, members of the board, and Dr. Finch, our committee was made up of teachers, administrator, parents, and community members from across the district that represented the general education, special education, and gifted education perspectives. Members committed to attend all 5 meetings that were required to see this process through the diligent rigor that our DVUSD Curriculum Instruction Assessment Department establishes with all of our adoptions, as Colleen so very well explained every single piece of it. This adoption process started in September and will be concluded in March. The K-12 music resource materials adoption was widely publicized. Requests for committee members were posted on the district website and sent to email to all DVUSD parents and music teachers for K-12. Flyers were distributed to all K-6, K-8 middle school and high school campuses to advertise the formation of the forming of a committee and the review of materials. These flyers were also available in the district office and posted in the case outside of the district office. The K-12 music resource materials adoption was publicized on the district website via email to parents, flyers, school marquees, and communications with teachers. Our K-12 students and music teachers have been teaching with materials from 2007-2008 school year to for the rationale our team recommends to balance our approach to learning with resources that support all student learners and teachers. This will also provide teachers with direct alignment to the Arizona Music Standards while meeting the needs for rigorous resources, materials, instruction, and professional development while supporting our district learning management system implementation. The recommended materials, after much review from our vendors, are Quaver Ed and Music First. All DVSD learners and music teachers will receive the very best in what the vendors have to offer in music education. Quaver Music is an effective resource for our teachers to utilize in the classroom. In addition to keeping with current trends in music and fine arts pedagogy, the Quaver Music platform allows teachers and students the ability to apply lessons in class or remotely to prevent learning loss during absences. This fully online resource has enabled us to make modifications while impossible to do so with print resources. As new research emerges related to music teaching and song origins, this resource includes Quaver PLC, a Quaver implementation team, specific training and professional development, along with ongoing instructional support, customer support, and tech support. Quaver Music aligns to the Arizona's music standards, complies with the NCCAS core standards for music, allows and follows a logical and compelling scope and sequence, which can be hand in hand with our district scope and sequence. The resource is highly interactive and visually engaging, promotes self-directed learning through interactively, and addresses multiple learning styles, such as visual, social, oral, kinesthetic, etc. For teachers and the students, there are easy to use pre-built lesson plans. It includes a large and varied repertoire of songs such as folk songs, seasonal music, world music, patriotic music, classical, and learning songs, to name a few. In addition, it includes a variety of song options for various teaching needs, such as key and tempo changes, instrumental vocal group isolation, measure and note highlighting, lyrical highlighting, solfege, and rhythm syllables. Quaver Music is fully aligned with the 2015 Arizona Music Standards as well as the National Core Arts Standards. Grade-specific standards are addressed in each of their 360 lessons to create a comprehensive vertical alignment with all general music curriculum. These standards are also listed in every printable lesson as shown in Exhibit 4.1. In addition to identifying the standards met in each lesson, Quaver has laid out the enduring understanding and essential questions tied to each related artistic focus, creating, performing, responding, connecting for each grade level. These are easily accessible to teachers for planning purposes from their curriculum features and best practices menu. Quaver Music is committed to representing and balancing different approaches to musical instruction within their resources. This includes support for all major pedagogies used in music education, reflecting the artistic processes at the heart of the NCCAS. There are 36 lessons for every grade level, with each lesson designed to last 30 to 45 minutes, with extended activities that can be added for another 30 to 45 minutes as desired. Teacher lessons have 7 parts: a welcome, engage, introduce, develop, summarize, assess in every third lesson, and an extension. Professional development includes a live customer support hotline staffed with music-specific personnel, reports on teacher activity, free resource upgrades for content and functionality. In addition, there are regular webinars and online training opportunities for teachers. Here we have an example of a student impact report. Districts can see the data from the programs quantified within each report, and these reports are able to be generated on the administrative dashboard. Here is an example of the benefits to teacher report results. Through the use of Quaver Ed, teachers' quality of job satisfaction and effectiveness has improved. Here are some comments that were left on the public review feedback form for Quaver Music. In conclusion, Quaver Ed includes all of the following elements: customizable lesson plans, class play, student accounts with cool avatars that students can create and personalize their experience with, lesson plan presenter, Box Brain, which is an invaluable student-designed resource for student access, teacher gradebook, quarterly content updates, rostering, single sign-on integration for Canvas, and access to 50-plus hours of online resources and professional development. Our next vendor is Music First. This is a cloud-based hub that contains a diverse software profile utilizing programs that our teachers are already familiar with and several new programs that will increase additional rigor in the teaching and learning process. Using their robust and intuitive technology maximizes rehearsal and practice time. Music First Classroom is a learning management system where teachers organize the software that enables independent student learning and whole group instruction. This software offers a full arrayment of options to design units and lessons around the Music First Classroom, integrations of Focus on Sound, Practice First, Sight Reading Factory, and Soundtrap. Multimedia Music Education Digital Encyclopedia, which is the Focus on Sound. The robust and intuitive practice assessment software is included with Practice First. It is a cloud-based software that provides students with instantaneous and intuitive feedback on their instrumental and vocal practice. Interactive sight reading software, which generates customized and unlimited sight reading exercises instantly. Soundtrap is a cloud-based software that allows students the opportunity to engage in music composition and production lessons using the latest educational technology available. Now let's take a closer look at the Music First Classroom. Their library offers high-quality resources for K-12 music programs aligned with the 2015 Arizona Music Standards. It provides a fully customizable courses, units, lessons, and assessments. They can all be found within the Music First Classroom content library. Such courses would include chorus, orchestra, band, piano, and guitar. Focus on Sound has 2 main sections for teachers and students to work within: instruments and musical topics. Each section contains a very comprehensive music dictionary, while instruments include woodwinds, brass, strings, percussion, voices, keyboards, guitars, world, historical ensembles, and techniques. Musical topics include basic sound, music theory, chords, keys, melody, rhythm structures, texture, music technology, popular styles, classical composers, jazz study pieces, and so on. The Practice First Library offers a multitude of ready-to-use method books that our teachers in DVUSD and love. There are many that are new to our teachers and will provide a true database for our teachers to identify what is best for their classroom. The repertoire for our music courses is diverse and meets all standards for music performance. It provides fully customizable practice exercises and assessments, including ensemble and solo repertoire and method books. The Sight Reading Factory allows users to specify instruments such as ensembles, rhythm only, piano, voice family, tone sets, guitar family, strings family, woodwind family, any kind of family you need that's instrumental or music-based. When teachers choose that, they select and then continue to move through a series of events where they select and continue to select to customize their sight reading for their music classes. There are resources in the Music First Soundtrap for Education, lesson plans, templates for all K-12 students, and subject areas. Areas of impact include practice and pedagogy, college and career readiness, equity and inclusion for English language learners, gifted and talented, special education, and alternative assessments. There are additional supports that can be found on their EDU portal for teacher snapshots, 100+ ideas and templates across all ages and subjects. Lessons include activities, curricula, and templates to use immediately in all classrooms. They also host events, which include virtual and in-person community building events to share ideas and ask questions. The Music First Classroom provides an easy-to-navigate dashboard for administrators to use, teachers, and students on a single dedicated site. Courses are laid out in a logical and intuitive format while allowing for full editing and customization capabilities. Teachers have visibility of their own classes and students. The Music First Classroom calendar and integrated standards allow for admin users to evaluate how resources and materials are being used and cross-reference the associated standards. Students will be able to access software at any point on the internet-enabled device. Task links, when copied and pasted into Canvas, email, or Remind integrations, allow students to bypass the Music First Classroom dashboard and navigate directly to the task. Music First digital student portfolio can easily be accessed and provides teachers and admin users a single screen view of the student's progress over time. This digital portfolio can follow the student as they move through grade levels, preserving vertical alignment tracking from all of their learning K-12. The Music First Classroom, Sight Reading Factory, and Practice First all provide an easy way to adjust assessment rigor on an individualized basis. This provides an effective means to accommodate students with IEPs and for teachers to plan with differentiated instruction in mind. Practice First allows exercises to be automatically assessed at various levels of rigor and accuracy. Levels can be adjusted from easy to hard, and threshold scores can be adjusted to accommodate all student levels. Here are some comments that were left on the public review feedback form. If approved, we will submit an order this spring. The adoption consists of digital licenses, which will be received in time for our teachers to begin with professional development this school year as a soft rollout for updating DVUSD curriculum documents and planning for implementation in the 2023-2024 school year.
The resources Anna just presented align with the Arizona Music Standards for grades K-12. Over 20,000 students in grades K-12 will benefit from these music resources that integrate digital, in-person, and hands-on components. The K-12 music curriculum resources adoption, including tax, will be approximately $921,000 and some change, and is within the budgeted amount for the curriculum adoptions in the 22-23 school year. We appreciate, again, the board's time and attention as we present our recommendations for curriculum resource materials for K-12 music. Professional development, as mentioned, will be provided to all teachers. That includes how to access the materials, as well as the expectation that all teachers utilize the district board-adopted resources and district curriculum for all music courses. As before, we will bring the K-12 music adoption recommendation back to you as an action item at the February 14th board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and effort for the presentation. Any questions? Okay, Ms. Fisher? Okay.
I just want to thank you and tell you how important music is. I recently found my old guitar and decided to keep my piano. My husband really appreciates digital because I have to relearn, So great job. Thank you.
We're moving on to discussion on standard-based grading. Ms. Fisher, can you please read the executive summary?
Standards-based grading will be on the next agenda for the board to provide direction for administration regarding grading and/or system. This item is to discuss standards-based gradings so questions can be answered. As an information foundation, you may consider reviewing or viewing the meetings from July 12th, as this is the last meeting containing the last official action of the board. The attached materials were provided by the district at various meetings. They may assist with forming questions for our discussion. No presentation will be provided. However, there were presentations provided on 11/1/22 and 11/15/22 with some public commentary at those meetings if you would like to review them. So this item is for mostly, so this is for the new board members to be able to review. That's why that's there.
Okay, so I'm going to say why this is on the agenda. I requested this as a discussion because there has been a lot of concerns among community and staff about standard-based grading. I was under the impression that former board advised the district to stop standard-based grading, but the only thing that happened was the language was changed to the spirit of standard-based grading, and old practice continue. The former board and board president chose to allow the insubordination to continue. Now that there is a new board, I would like to hear their thoughts about standard-based grading and whether it will be benefit to bring this item back to action and to provide the district with clear expectation. I would like to hear from the other board members with their thoughts. Any questions?
So yes, as a new board member, I have gone back and watched those meetings, and I feel like they were very informative, and I liked having that availability to go and look back at those. But as a board member, I think I was approaching that previously more as a parent. As a board member, now that I represent parents and teachers and students, I would personally feel more comfortable discussing the topic when I have had the opportunity to go and visit at schools more times. I haven't been able to do that as much, and just talk to administration, talk to teachers, what's working, what's not working. It was nice to be able to have teachers here tonight that were sharing their concerns, because teachers, their role is so important in this. And my initial concerns with standard-based grading was the workload that it would add to teachers. I just want to be able to go out to our community and talk with our different schools and just kind of get an understanding maybe see it in the classroom in some other level grades. I have an understanding of it since I am a parent of the district. My daughter was in the Norterra Canyon IB program, so we did learn the standard-based grading at that point when she was in 6th grade, and now she's at Goldwater. So for her, it hasn't really changed anything. And then as far as my youngest goes, who's now 2nd grade, we were one of the schools that first adopted it. So again, it hasn't been much of a change for her. It's all she's ever known. And then as a teacher, I'm very familiar with the 1 through 4 standard grading that we always had done on our report cards, and then also attached a percentage grade to those. So I just want to try to understand if I'm missing anything, or and most important, just to really get the public's feedback. And I appreciate, like I said before, coming and talking today. I just want to be able to go out to our community and do a little bit more of that before we vote on it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Ms. Orway.
Dr. Galligan, do you have more recent data for the grading, the achievements, so on and so forth?
President Paperman, Ms. Ordway, we plan to bring to our board, at your pleasure, the survey data that has occurred for our campus administrators, teachers, and the parents at the 16 Phase 1 and Phase 2 schools. Those surveys are closing at the end of this month, and we will be able to provide you that data. We will also have an updated listing of grades based on Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 of our students and how they did in the first semester. That information will be available early in February, if it would be at your pleasure, at the first board meeting in February. We have had very good turnout, President Paperman, in the surveys from all of the stakeholder groups, and we would appreciate having opportunity to share that with our board.
And I'm not Dr. Finch or Dr. Gallen, whoever, I'm not sure how you capture this. I've heard from the teachers and the parents, and basically it's the same ones and nothing has changed for them. However, I've also heard from teachers, I say many, so it's 50 many, I don't know, that were against this, didn't understand it. I can't hold them accountable. I have no, basically I've got nothing to hold over here for them. And now they've changed. And some of them totally changed. Like, whatever. So I don't know how you capture that, but I know that we have around 32,000 students in the district, which would lead me to believe that, divide that in two, maybe that's how many parents we have or caregivers. I want to make sure the easiest thing would be to listen to this group that's here and say, get rid of it. But I just want to make sure that that is the pulse of our community. And it's also the pulse of the teachers and what they're seeing in the learning. Because I believe that we've had 2 schools that went from C's to A's that did absolutely embrace the mindset. I don't know if they had delved totally into the standard-based grading, but the beauty of that was that the kids had retained the information from the prior grade to the next grade and could work seamlessly. So we have two new board members that I don't think have had the opportunity to go out. I mean, I don't know, Paul, if you've been out to any of the schools. But when you have a discussion item and you say that we're going to vote on it as an action item, to me that was a little bit cart before the horse. So if we do want to vote on it, again, I want to make sure that the time, the money that has been put into this and is still being put into it is not wasted, and that the kids in the middle of a semester or at the end of a semester, something's different, because I've heard from students too saying that they've never done well and now they understand it. And when we want to use the examples of our, high school kids
having a chance to do it over again. And in the real world, you don't get that chance. There's plenty of graduates from O'Connor or the 5 high schools, but I'll choose O'Connor, that have not raised their hand and asked a professor if they could take the test again. They might have raised their hand to see if they could use a restroom because they're not used to being able to go out by themselves. So I just want to make sure that we have that clear picture before we were to vote in any way, shape, or form on this. And I will say putting a flag down is putting a flag down. And I think that from what I've heard, part of the problem is that teachers are not, for whatever the reason is, implementing what they're supposed to be doing in a timely fashion. So I think that that has to be looked at.
Thank you, Ms. Orway. Mr. Carver?
I just want to jump in real quick, but when I could too, I did get to talk about the data. So I really do look forward to the 14th and getting those surveys back from the parents and administration. I think that's going to say a lot, especially since I'm under the understanding that it was done in a way that was I'll go back. I have talked with some teachers who have been, nervous to share their experiences because they're afraid about what administration might say. And so I'm grateful that this opportunity is there for them as well, and it might actually give us a clearer idea of what's working. And I also want to mention that we have received some emails, especially in the last couple of days, from teachers in the district who find this standard-based grading is working well for them. So I'm feeling like there's two different, there's either the ones who say that it doesn't at all, and then there's ones who say this is the best thing that's ever happened. So again, being able to talk with these people and visit within our community in enough time would be grateful. Thank you.
Mr. Carver?
So I appreciate the opportunity for us to bring this back up. I sat out there last year when we reviewed this, when the board hashed through it several times, when the community came and spoke up many times. And I'd have to say that I'm with the mindset that the community had after the last meeting where everybody talked about we agreed with the standards-based mindset, but that the grading portion of it was broken, was just abhorrent, that the kids couldn't, the overachievers didn't know what they needed to do to overachieve. The underachievers now got to be average every day. Yes, we eliminated 49 points of failure down to 18 points of failure, but sometimes the sad fact of reality is that you don't get to succeed. And I thought after that meeting that we weren't going to be moving forward. So I think for clarity that the board needs to revisit this. I will be out in the district. I've received several requests to go out to the schools and see how it works in the classroom. And I appreciate that because I don't presume to know everything. Matter of fact, everybody in the cabinet and in the administration has heard me say that I'm going to do my level best to try to educate myself on every nuance that we have to deal with because we need to make the best choices possible for the students. Fact of the matter is that everybody on the board represents the community. And if we were to vote right now, the unfortunate state of affairs is I have at least 20 emails and messages in the last couple of days telling me how much people don't like it, and I've only heard from 2 people, and they both happen staff at different schools, how much they like it. We've unfortunately, as a district, I think, done ourselves a disservice in the execution of this, and that has added to the angst of the parents and some of the children that are trying to fight their way through this. And then we add to that the confusion at the last board meeting where it sounded like everybody was, no, we're not moving forward, and then we move forward. And now people are wondering who's leading what and who's doing what because of the confusion. I can tell you that the motion that was put before the board that they voted on was so included that it shouldn't have been worded that way. We need to work on clarity. We need to work on transparency. And because of everything that's happened up to this point, I think that this new board needs to sit down and take a look at it. And if it requires a study session, and that's what it requires. but this is obviously a hot topic for the community, as it should be, because it affects the children. So I'm thankful to President Paperman for the opportunity for us to revisit this, and I'd like to see us do it as a study session and not keep the concerned stakeholders of the community here for hours on end while we rehash facts and figures and viewpoints. So that's my 2 cents, President.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Mrs. Fisher?
You know, I wish I would not have gotten sick. I was going to attend a PLC for one of our schools, and unfortunately, I got COVID. So I did not go to the school for good reason. I wish I had been able to do that so I could maybe have a different perspective. But other than the very few, we like it, we support it, I have received an overwhelming amount of stress from teachers and parents, parents' concerns, where they're at, what's happening. And honestly, I was pretty sure, I was actually surprised. I thought we had 5 board members that said, let's pause. Let's pause. And I believe Mr. Carver is correct that let's pause became so convoluted with, well, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. But since that time, some of the teachers who have contacted me have said, we're going full steam ahead. We're being told it's coming now. I am so stressed. I'm going to quit. I'm so stressed. I'm not really wanting to retire because I really want to get to that next, whatever it is, marker or whatever it is. But if this goes into my school, I'm going to have to seriously consider retirement. I have been in contact with certain individuals with the Department of Education who are not really sure this is something that is necessarily a good idea either. Now, that's a very new conversation. I will be in contact with Ms. Udall. Ms. Barrett had recommended I speak with her directly. So I will email her and get some more data, or at least opinion, thoughts, understanding. I appreciate that we're doing a survey, that the district did a survey. However, I continue to get things like, I'm not about to answer a survey. I don't want them to know who I am. I don't want my name. I don't want, and I don't want them to identify me because I'm at this school and I'm a teacher. I don't want them to identify my IP address. I know. I see the look on your face because that's one of the things that even when I was actually working in education, we would get, they're going to see my IP address. No, they're not. But that fear is there. That fear is there, whether it's founded or unfounded. And I don't believe that we get a completely honest answer when that occurs. I would support having an actual study session, not a presentation, a study session where people come to the table and they discuss this topic and this situation. And I would encourage the many teachers who say they're afraid to step forward. No one can, well, I can't say that because I know the way things work. I know that ultimately the board has to approve any termination. That doesn't mean that your life can't be made hell. But I also know that staying silent is not going to fix anything. And, we're so far into this, we need to make good decision, whether it's completely stopping it everywhere, whether it's keeping the mindset and stopping the grading system. I personally don't like kids getting a 50% for not turning in anything. the everybody gets a trophy. And I'm sorry, but being a kid who did have my struggles, when I had a 0, I'm going to tell you, I stressed and I worked to fix it because I knew I had to face my father. It just is a reality. That's parent and kid. So I think if the board would like, a majority of the board would like a study session, a true study session, no presentation, just people coming around a table and talking and sharing their situations. A lot of minds can fix problems. If there's just problems that we potentially could fix, then we fix them. If it's too many problems right now and we need to stop, we also need to know when we're going to stop, what's the impact to some of the schools who are long time. So, I mean, we need to know the impact of stopping. We need to know the impact. But what we do need to do is make a decision sooner rather than later because, and I'm not sure whether Mr. Carver said it or one of the speakers said it, we need consistency and certainty. We don't need to, well, am I going to send my kid to that school and maybe they're going to get an education? Maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to do this. Maybe they're not. Parents don't like that. I wouldn't like that for my child to be uncertain in what was the expectation. So I think sooner rather than later, we need to have this discussion so that we can move forward. That's my opinion on this.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. My vision with this standard-based grading, to me, there's been so much confusion. What I see is that we need to unify all our schools to be in one grading system where teachers, grade level teachers, will understand the same grading system. And right now we have different schools and different grading systems. So this is very confusing. We also need to have grade level teachers to collaborate. Getting all those grade level teachers to work together, look at that same data, not a different data that's standard-based grading or traditional grading. We need to compare data to look at strengths and weaknesses. We also look to make sure we look at assessment that they are aligned to that data. So right now, what I see is, and I still hear from teachers and parents that we have schools that are doing different things. And for the high schools, it's even more challenging. For example, my daughter, Barry Goldwater High School, she had standard-based grading. She had a hard time with that because it was very difficult for her to get a 4 because what determines a 4? So she had a hard time with that. Then when she went to college, it went back to percentage. So why are we, making our kids, to struggle with this new grading system? Because when they graduate to college, it's going to go back to percentage. Survey data, I agree with Mrs. Fisher. I've been in a classroom for 21 years, and yes, a lot of times teachers are not going to be honest on the survey. If we're going to do survey data, can we have maybe the teacher association, if they can create their own survey and see and compare the data, if we can have that to be transparent, or give the parents the opportunity. Maybe the parents can come up with a survey, look and compare the data. So we can see the population, if we want to keep this or if we don't. So if the teacher association be willing to do that, that would be great. Thank you. Ms. Fisher.
And I know we have the association that does their own surveys and stuff, but if we, years ago, and I don't know why we never used it. We actually had our own, account to do surveys. Why don't we come up with a board just doing a survey for anyone and everyone, and have us. I just want consistency, I guess is what I'm looking for. I want something that our teachers they feel comfortable answering, and our parents feel comfortable answering, and even administrators feel comfortable answering, and unless they say, hey, my name is such and such, where we can get a true opinion of what this is. I'm just throwing out the idea if you want to possibly, I think we can even probably do a Survey Monkey at no cost or something of that nature. Um, I just wanted, I don't want this to become another divisive thing between the teachers and the parents and the administration I would like to see perhaps it become more a uniting tool than a dividing tool. And I don't know what other board members think about us doing our own survey. Sometimes, sometimes I think that's it's overstepping, um, but we need to, we either need to get on the boat or we need to put it in dry dock. And I can't think of any other way to gather the data.
This is something that we can bring up to a study session because I know survey has been an issue even in past board meetings. The board can decide how we want to collect data within the district. Also, maybe consideration, any survey that's going to be provided, let it be reviewed by the governing board. Maybe that will be some policy. But those are discussions that the board can have during a study. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. The next item is special legal counsel. Mrs. Fisher, can you read the executive summary?
As we seek to form a productive board, it is vital that we are all comfortable with the legal advice regarding various governance topics. For this reason, the board will consider or would like to consider having attorney exclusively for the board to ask questions when needed. This item is for the board to discuss and consider retention of a board attorney. Per policy BDG and or BDH, we can elect to have this type of counsel. Administration's involvement would be limited to the billing alone.
Any questions on this item? Ms. Orway? Okay. Stephanie?
Yeah, I want to start by saying, I guess my most basic question is why? Because I'm under the understanding that we have a fantastic department and a group of attorneys and that we have full access to should we need it. So to take funding from something like and having our own counsel, I'm just very confused about that because it doesn't make any sense to me. Our current lawyers that represent us here in the district are some of the best in the state. They've been vetted over and over. So I would really like to have some reasons, actual reasons produced of why we would need our own legal counsel when we fully have access to a fantastic legal counsel, should need be.
Mr. Carver?
Well, I'd have to admit that I've got to read up on the policies that are highlighted here. I did not do that before the meeting. I apologize for that. But I can understand the need for it. If it's listed in the policies as an option, then I can understand that because we're only exercising a policy that exists for the board. My concern about it, though, everybody knows that I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to spending money. I don't like to do it, especially when it's the taxpayer's dollar. So I would need to understand the cost versus the benefit. I would like to also understand the responsibility that current legal counsel has to the different aspects of the district. I understand that this legal counsel, the way that this executive summary is written, this legal counsel would be for and on behalf of the board exclusively. So to what extent does the other legal counsel perform duties for us? Do they compartmentalize if the board has an issue that they don't care to discuss outside of the board, or is everything open for discussion? So those are just some things that I would need to look at and understand before I could, but we're in the discussion part, so that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Ms. Orway?
Were we looking to get an answer to Mr. Carver's question? Questions, Jim, Dr. Finch? I don't know who's going to answer it.
I mean, I would really like to know the why. Why would we need something like this?
I mean, I would just like Mr. Carver's questions answered, and then maybe we can go.
Okay, you want to go? Mr. Finch?
I can, I won't be able to answer specific questions that you're referring to because what you're asking for is a separate attorney from our attorneys, the district attorneys. So the rules that you would use around it, I'm assuming would be contained in the board, how you would set it up, who has access, how fast can the meter run, is there a limit? Is it only the president can call? Can everybody call? You'd have to make some kind of arrangement.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Your question was right now, what do they do?
My concern, or rather what I wanted to be able to understand, is our current legal representation that we have. Do they compartmentalize between, like, if a member of the board goes to them with a question that they have that they don't necessarily aware of at the time, do they compartmentalize where, even though they represent the district, they can keep things separate and deal with people individually or groups, as it were? Or is it one of those, I've got something really juicy I want to talk to them about concerning Sheila, are they going to go tell Sheila, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I see what you're asking. Historically, I don't know if it's in policy or not, but I'm assuming it is, that the president is the one who calls the attorney. So if you had a question on Sheila, for example, or the position of a secretary can do X, Y, or Z, you would contact Ms. Paperman. Ms. Paperman would call the attorney and hash that out, and it would be between you, and she could report to you or whatever on that to answer that question in that particular example. So yeah, our attorneys are specialists. So we have one that's really good at special needs, one that's really good at governance, one that's really good at school law, et cetera, as you stated as well, the best in the state. So I've asked other districts if anyone else has this, and there was one in Scottsdale. Ms. Paperman referenced that a decade ago or many years ago. And then Ms. Fisher said there was one in Phoenix Union a while ago as well. So I don't know anybody in the state that's currently doing that, but and I couldn't find anyone in my circles, but I think those are two examples that it has been done historically. I don't know what caused it or what was the reason around it. Perhaps they might know, but the general idea is to separate from the district. But all district attorneys, all in the entire state, protect the district over anything in the machine. That's what they are paid to do. And they will tell you, I'm representing the district when I'm answering this question.
Paul, I just wanted to say one more thing, Tim, and then I've got my questions. Previous, a couple of years ago, there were questions that a board member wanted to ask council about the superintendent that was here at the time. Confidentiality is confidentiality. They don't share their stuff. And there's, in my opinion, there is no lawyer that's going to put their livelihood on the line because they don't like you and they want someone else to know. So say we go down this, in my opinion, frivolous path. Whatever this attorney would say to us is then going to be double-checked again by another attorney for the district, so there's going to be a double bill. So that's more money there. Apparently, there is one school district, and
the name of that district was cut off in my text, so that'll come to an email tomorrow that does it, but there are not, it's just not school districts that do that. And I'm just wondering, what would be the reason for it? I mean, if anyone on the board, myself, anyone, would have an issue personally with a firm, that's my problem, because this is not about me. It's about this district. And the caliber of law firms and their employees that are on our list are impeccable. And they are not going to put their reputation on the line to be petty or something. So that's my 2 cents. Or maybe it was my 8 cents.
You want me to? You want to
Yeah,
go
if
next?
you want to go,
Okay.
then I'll go.
Okay, so I'm going to give my reason why this is putting on the agenda. I think there has been an issue in the district for a long time. The way our systems is supposed to work is that the public elects the board, and then the superintendent reports to the board. In Deer Valley, the board has been reporting to the superintendent, and that needs to change. The board cannot fulfill its responsibility to the public if that is occurring. I believe that the board needs its own attorney as opposed to sharing one with the superintendent and ASBA to determine how to change this dynamic. In my view, the purpose of the attorney will be to seek advice if there were concerns about the superintendent's performance or policy adoption, if the board and districts administrations were not in agreement on the wording. Mrs. Fisher.
Just finishing writing your comment. Okay. Well, there's a lot to go with off of this. I'm going to start with your first question of who can contact and whether or not it would be any different. It is in policy who can contact our attorney. And it is exclusively is the board president. And the reason that is because we really don't want individuals just randomly calling our attorney. Because when they pick up the phone, there's a little clock that starts spinning and a big bill that we're going to receive. So only the board president is to contact the attorney unless there is a special circumstance and the board directs someone else. So that answers that first one. To answer an implication isn't a direct statement, but an implication. This is not about an issue with a specific attorney or an individual. Everybody in God's green earth knows I have a problem with Rob Oz. It is not about him. The district will still use him, has nothing to do with it. I will still re-review everything he does because I don't trust him. That's me. That has nothing to do with the board, and that has nothing to do with the district. Okay? As for the why, and I think it's really written right here, we're seeking to form a productive board. And the board has had issues with being productive. And that's notable over the last 4 years, where some members are listened to, some aren't. You know, and there are opinions. As I've looked at the different opinions, and I have a deep respect for some of our attorneys, but the advice they would have given 5 years or 6 years ago is not the same advice they've given in the last couple of years, last 4 years or so. And yes, their job is to work for and protect the district. Any attorney that we as a board have, that's still their job. They're not our attorney, they are the district's attorney. As far as confidentiality, yes, it is true. If you go and say, you know, we need to talk about, you know, let's stop picking on Sheila. We need to talk about Miss Galligan, Dr. Galligan. Sorry, you just weren't looking up, so you got it. Number one, if that was a conversation we were to have, she is an employee of Dr. Finch. That would go that route. From the concept that I'm seeing is when we would need additional support or questions that we need, and it's not specific to just the superintendent. Sometimes it's a question of what are we doing and how we're doing. Now, if we did have a conversation, the problem is if we had a conversation about, let me give it, I can use an example of an open meeting situation. It is not confidential. The very first person they're going to call is Dr. Finch. And he's going to say, this is what I want to occur. And that's going to really, in sometimes, guide their guidance. They will stay within the law, but it'll be
If you
geared.
ask them, can you help me there? You see, if you asked them to be confidential, they would call me. Is that what you said?
No,
Oh, okay.
a topic like of that
Oh, okay.
nature.
Yeah, okay.
Topic.
Yeah, because
If we said we want to talk about, well, number one, we wouldn't say anyone other than talking about the superintendent, or if there's an investigation. Here's an example for you. We were going to do, we were looking into procedures, making sure stuff was done correctly. We actually got an attorney who was not one of our standard attorneys to handle that situation for us. As you know, Ms. Paperman has expressed, I did speak with other historical board members who have done that before. It was to ensure the advice they were getting was in the best interest, totally operation-wise, for the district, not for just the board and not for just the superintendent or administration. So that was the reason they did it. And that's the reason I think it should be. I would say if we move forward with something of this nature, number one, set a limit. And as far as it taking money away, it might take money away from the chosen attorneys. It won't be additional budget. We need to set a, look, this is for special situations or when there's a concern. And there's no reason that our attorney's opinion would have to be re-reviewed by another attorney. Unless we're gonna, start having double reviews of subjects. So I'm not sure where that comes from. As I've researched and looked into this, it would be we are going to retain an attorney with a max limit of X amount for certain situations regarding governance. And if the board, not one individual, but the board says, or the majority of the board, because it's not, sometimes we don't seem to be able to agree. But if the majority of the board says, look, we need an opinion on this, and I really want to know that this is for best interest of the district, I would like to use our board-specific attorney. And that is the reason that I would agree with doing that. And I could give an exact example of what, but the point of this isn't to have a controversy. The point of this is to make sure the board has what it needs to function and operate. Where Miss Ordway or I'm sorry, Stephanie, can you pronounce your last name for me? Simachek. With Ms. Ordway or Ms. Simachek or Mr. Carver or Ms. Paperman, if any of you felt uncomfortable with something that one of the attorneys is saying, I think we would use our own attorney and say, look, we need clarity on this. I think it would be minimal use, but I do think it has its place. I know that years ago when I was board president, or years ago when Mr. Gregoire was, there were times where there was a question of whether or not an opinion was for the district or for individuals. And I just think we need an avenue to answer that question, should it arise. I do think it should be limited scope. Our attorneys, as much as I dislike Rob Haas, I do know that his company is our number one for bonds. It just is. That's the way it is. Denise Lowell Britt, she is most known for human resource questions. I will tell you, when I was board president and a human resource administrator, we agreed on a lot of things. And even the assessment of things, which kind of changed a little bit in the last year. That laws didn't change, HR didn't change, but the scope of the opinion changed. That concerns me. At that time is when I would ask for a separate. So that's why I think it, like I said, I think it should be, I do think we should have one. I think it should be limited in scope. We set an amount. And I think it should follow all board policies. So no, we don't all get to a column, but I also think that maybe we would add that the board president would call on the direction of a board majority. That way we know it's something that the board as a whole feels is needed. So like I said, I do agree with having one, but I agree it should be limited scope and it should have a cap.
Mrs. Paperman?
Yes, Ms. Orway.
So going back to your situation that you were referring to, we used a lawyer that was in the district at the time, and the situation was resolved for Mr. Gregoire and whatever else went on with that. When we used an outside lawyer for the situation, we used an outside lawyer. We didn't hire one for the district or for the governing board. When Mrs. Paperman made her statement, I believe it was an opinion, I don't ever remember working for anyone in this district because when you work for someone, you get paid for that. I'm here for children, and I spend my time in this district to make sure every decision I make ends with, I can sleep now because it's in the best interest of children. So just the premise of saying that the rationale for this was to form a productive board, that was great wording, great wording. So unless we're looking to hire a lawyer specifically and specialized for this board, so we can hold the hammer over whomever's head, go for it. But we have a bevy of lawyers that are approved that if we want to get an independent from Denise Lowell-Britt, crazy little law firm that might be great with many employees, or Rob Hawes, crazy little law firm, maybe they're well-known throughout the country. We have all those other lawyers at our disposal. And how do you expect to get, how do we decide whether the majority of the board wants to ask this lawyer a question? Because we have to do that in an open forum because that would be open meeting law. So if we're worried about open meeting law being broken with our lawyer, our superintendent, we'll go to the ombudsman or the attorney general because they frown upon things like that. Superintendents don't like to get fired for it, and attorneys don't like to have their reputations trashed. So to me, there is no point other than a power play here, and I'm not really that interested in the power play.
Mr. Carver?
Thank you, President Paperman. So I was just looking up policy BDG and the fourth paragraph. I think this kind of puts us to an end of a discussion because it says the superintendent and the president of the board shall be designated as the representatives of the district who may confer with the council. The district will not be responsible for fees, blah, blah, blah. But the first sentence there was the one that caught my attention because it sounds like the intent of this council is to be at the sole discretion of the board without any input or contact from anybody in the administration, and this policy does not allow us to do that. So I don't know. I understand your concerns. I hear where you're coming from, and I'm not trying to discount them.
Read
But
the next one,
copies of all written requests for opinions.
the next policy.
BDG?
No, this one.
BDH?
The next policy that's
Yeah,
referenced.
I've got it. I've got it. The district may employ consultants when appropriate to carry out tasks or projects that enhance the effectiveness of district operations when the district does not have the specialized competency on its staff, when such assignments would be burdensome to the school staff when added to their full-time assignments. The kinds of assistance sought from consultants may include, but will not be necessarily limited to, conducting fact-finding studies, surveys, research, providing counsel or services requiring special expertise, and assisting the board in developing policy and program recommendations. The employment of specific consultants within the budget funds of the district will be the responsibility of the superintendent. I read that, but I don't see where it gives us the opportunity to hire a counsel without giving the people that we're trying to avoid having access to the council.
Well, it says right there that we can have counsel for special situations, and we can have, it says that the superintendent would be the financial part.
If
So
that's
it
the battle
does,
you want
it
to fight,
does
I'm just
allow.
saying, I don't see it, but if you see it, then,
Well,
then
that's how we used the last one, and this is the policy that we were able to do it by. And honestly, apparently some board members don't want to have a functional board. God forbid we get together and have a conversation, even in public, an actual conversation, and we say, we need legal counsel. Let's use this. That's the purpose of this, because you know what, we don't talk. We some board members plan gotchas. They plan well, if she says this, then I'm going to say this, and this is about this, and this. Don't make assumptions what it's about. And that's part of the problem. It definitely shows exactly why we need this type of thing. And if you want to talk about open meeting law directly, that's part of what caused the open meeting law problems with having a full-out meeting for a review rather than actually having a review. It was a misuse, and it was a misuse of the advice that was given by one of those attorneys.
So are we looking for an attorney or a counselor?
An attorney to provide counsel in situations when the board deems necessary. And you know, if you want, sure, we can. Every time there's anything, we can go through the process of then getting somebody, going through that extended process, or we could just have someone who is set. If we never use them, cool, they cost us nothing. If we need them, they're there.
There's been a mention about the last 4 years and how the board hasn't been functioning properly or something to that extent. But the last 4 years is like a time you can't even compare anything to. I mean, we had COVID, our schools shut down, our students went to online learning. The board, although I was not on it at the time, was facing so many challenges and could not make one side happy by, supporting another side. And so I don't think that that's comparable. And I just want to go back really quick to what Mrs. Ordway said about the complaint. It's a complaint. So if we were to have our own attorney and file a complaint, the opposing attorney would have to reply to that complaint. So therefore you are then, you're submitting the complaint. The other side has to answer the complaint. So you're now doubling fees on attorneys, which at the end of the day, I did this for the students. And to me, this is a complete waste of time when we have so many things that are going on right now in our community that our students need us for, to hire an attorney when we have some amazing attorneys available for us by just picking up the phone seems absolutely ridiculous to me. I'm sorry, but it does.
The board does understand we don't file complaints, correct? We wouldn't file complaints. We don't do that.
If you file a question, it's called a complaint. If you were to file a question to your, let's just say there's an attorney for the board. If you were to file a question, ask a question, it had to be filed, the other side would have to come back with an answer. That's two different sides of legal counsel working to answer the same question. So we're now doubling the cost of attorneys.
There's no other side. We're just seeking advice.
You're gonna pay when you seek it. You don't seek advice from an attorney and it's free.
No, we don't. You're correct.
So
I'm saying we're seeking advice from an attorney. There's not going to be another counsel on the other side. When we have a question that we have to answer, alternatively, every time we get an advice from our current attorneys, then we can request an additional attorney's advice because we don't trust that one. That's what I'm saying. It goes both directions. This is item, I agree with Ms. Paperman. I see the reason. I did speak with a board member in Scottsdale who also had it, and I understood their reasons.
It doesn't seem like a typical thing that most school boards do.
It isn't.
And so I just, again, will go back to why. And if the response is because our board has not been functioning well for 4 years, then I would definitely argue on that side as well, because these last 4 years, I mean, we can all agree, have just been unprecedented. There's nothing we could have ever planned to be in the last 4 years. We are finally pulling out and we're seeing the light and we're getting there. And it is so, it's disturbing that we have been making so much progress in this last year alone to be able to sit back and say, well, we don't work together, so we need to have an attorney. But then only some of the people on the board want the attorney when other people don't want the attorney on the board. So that doesn't make any sense to me either. That's when you guys go into saying, well, if the majority wants it. But again, we have attorneys available to us. I don't see why we need to go spending more money to get advice from another attorney.
I break it down to real simple. We have attorneys who are beholden to the superintendent who will or won't use them based on the opinion. Because he selects, for every one question we have, the superintendent uses those attorneys for all kinds of things that we have nothing to do with. In the event that they are going to give an opinion, I honestly, I don't trust some of the opinions.
So are you, Mrs. Paperman, this is the last thing I'm going to
So,
interject
so
'cause
this
it's getting
is,
late.
okay, so this is an attorney where, for example, I'm going to give an example. I couldn't get my computer fixed just 5 minutes away from my home because the superintendent said, oh, policy says that you cannot go. So his attorney probably maybe sees it the way he sees it, but I talked to other board members and they said that that doesn't exist. So this is an example. Yes, I would like to have, consultation maybe from a different attorney. Can you please look at this policy? Does this align to what the superintendent has in place?
Okay, I just need to say one more thing with maybe a few parts to it. So Mrs. Fisher and Mrs. Paperman, you're saying, or you just said, that our attorneys do things the way the superintendent wants them. They see things his way. I would think that right now, if any of the attorneys that we use are listening to that, they might be thinking twice about using us. And at this moment in time, I'm going to miss the rest of the meeting because I was supposed to be home about a half an hour ago. I am against doing this because we, again, have a corral, a bevy of more than qualified attorneys that don't work for either of the names are gone, but with Hawes or with Denise Lowbrit.
We're done with Mr. Carver.
No, I'm looking forward to the next
Okay.
item on the agenda.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, so we're gonna move on to next item, governing board retreat. Ms. Fisher, can you please read the executive summary?
We would like to have a board retreat as soon as possible. Governing board members are to please bring their calendars to the meeting so we can set a date. Additionally, if you would like to request a specific topic, please bring them so that we can put them on the list for consideration. If we have more than one meeting can hold, we can get them on the list for consideration. So what dates work for who?
Are we looking for a particular day of the week?
Can you elaborate a little bit, sorry, about what the retreat is?
Board retreats are generally, it's a team building exercise. Sometimes we pick a topic, get people familiar with, say, finance or We can talk about, that's why you bring topics, where you get to kind of see how the superintendent's evaluation is done, what that looks like. Not doing it, it's just what the tool is. The basics of school finance, where that information is, where you find it. Depending on who sets it up, you'll sometimes do a team building, who are we type situation. When I was in Ms. Paperman's position with Dr. Weitenheimer, we actually did a personality study and to see kind of where we all fell. We did that. I've seen others where it's just team building. Sometimes it's, so that's where bringing the topics. If there's something specific you want to discuss, like how we have meetings, sometimes you can discuss the structure of our agenda. If there's something on the agenda that bothers you, or that bothers board members in general, that's something we can discuss. Sometimes you can discuss board evaluation. We can discuss how policies are being adopted, what those policies look like. Normally, when you're going to bring policies to like a retreat, you'll bring the board policies, the ones that are direct impact to us, and then we can go over them and, see what, not necessarily to change them, because you don't change anything. You vote on nothing. This is just to get the board talking and working together, functional, because we have a duty and we need to be able to work together to do it, regardless of what we believe. So that's the point of a board retreat.
February 11th.
February 11th.
I think we should wait for Anne at the next meeting to take care of it.
She'll have to email if she's available those dates. I mean, we always check. So 2/11, Ms. Paperman, do you have your calendar?
What time do you want to do it on the 11th? Oh, Saturday, okay.
Yeah,
so
he generally
Saturday
would
works,
do
yeah.
it. I'm not getting up early on a Saturday. I get up at 4 a.m. every other day. 10 to 2, bring your lunch. That's not a bad idea. Does that, does that kind of go in line with everyone?
That works for me, yeah.
Okay. I'm open. Is there any reason in the district that is not a good date?
Do you want the superintendent to be there? Do you want the staff to be there? Because obviously they will need to check their calendars as well. Or if it's just the board, that's fine too.
I think with it just being the first one, we should probably just make sure the board can be here so that we can get to know each other and identify everybody's mindset.
I would agree, but I think, I don't know.
Public meeting.
It is a public meeting. We can do it almost anywhere, but we can record, but it doesn't have to be recorded.
Well, here's fine.
Yeah.
He's just asking if we need support personnel, and I don't think we need to tie up every.
No.
Like you said, it's just so that we can have a discussion with each other to see where our heads are at and what we want to get done. Try to come to some basic understanding so that we can move forward and be productive.
Okay.
So we don't need to, these folks have tied up a lot of their time dealing with us already. We don't need to eat up
I
the
agree.
weekend.
What do you think about, do you want Dr. Finch there?
It doesn't matter to me.
The district is welcome if they want to attend. It's open to the public.
But if you want him to be a participant in the meeting, the whole point of building a team means we need to build a team.
Then I think that we should invite Dr. Finch because he's part of the team.
Correct. That's just my opinion as well.
Are you available that day, Dr. Finch?
I might not be. That's where I was going with it.
Popular fellas.
Yeah. But
busiest out of all of us.
Well, the 18th, he's going to Texas, correct?
I think not that day.
No.
A couple days after that. But if I know in advance, then I can maybe rearrange it a little bit, maybe move my stuff to the PM instead of the AM. But I just can't guarantee that I'm going to be there. I do see something on it.
Course about 3 and still get 18.
I play golf once a year.
can we just
Now, that is a good idea, by the way.
maybe have Sheila find some dates or something and like come back to this so we don't have to like hold up the community tonight?
We got
Do you
what,
have another
February
date
11th?
available?
Not till the end of February or early March.
Okay, so probably the 11th and the 25th. Look at those two.
Flexible at the time, I just threw 10 to 2 out there just for the sake of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. 10 to 2 just sounds good, but it could be earlier or.
Yeah, I think it'd have to be early for me. Yeah. I'm 92% sure it's an AM thing, pre-AM that I'm going to. So not super early, but so if it was earlier, would be way earlier would be better, or way later would be better. Is what I'm thinking. Does that make sense?
So if you could just get us times. Okay.
Plus what works
Now,
on Saturday.
and then do you want to just send in topics on what topics you would like? I mean, I know which topics I would prefer. I want at least a basic understanding of school finance, where it comes from, and I can put that together. I would like to look at the other main thing we do is policy. So look at our policies and how they're done. The tool we use for superintendent evaluation, we still have to use it this year regardless of what the board says, because that's in place and it doesn't change. But if we want to use a better tool, this is the time that you would start those discussions.
There's
and
also-
also figuring out how that tool works.
There's also board self-evaluation if we want to look at that, because we're also get evaluated.
We could.
Yeah.
So each of us bring something.
Well,
At least
we need
one,
to
maybe
know
two
ahead of
things.
time.
Need to know ahead of time because
So-
there's some scheduling that has to occur.
Right. Well, because, if we're not aware of what it is, school finance I can do because I've worked it. I can get updates, and I don't want to burden them, and I'm not going to look at our finances. We're talking about structure of how it works. So
By February 4th, we all need to have something we want to talk about.
if you want it, then put it in so that we can get it on the agenda, and if there's anything that needs to be prepped. Okay? Do you want them to email it to you, so you can put it together, or? would you prefer it?
So the board retreat, I know being for 2 years on this board, I have never been on a board retreat. We never had one. So Mrs. Fisher, you experienced with that, right? With the process and all that.
Yes.
So I can work with you with that, with the board retreat, with this first
So
one.
you can send in any agenda, any
Okay.
items you would like on it. We're not voting on anything, and then we can just put it together into the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll work together for
Okay.
the retreat. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We're going on to board reports. Stephanie?
So yeah, I had the wonderful opportunity to go to the Barry Goldwater Sophomore Passion Projects as part of their IB program. And every sophomore participated in this. So imagine the whole school kind of opened up and you can go into all these different classrooms and each student was in there presenting anything from cooking to fashion to sports related. It was just a really wonderful experience. And the more I talk with the students, I was so impressed with the way they just really put themselves out there, because it takes a lot to be able to do that, especially at that age. And some of the confidence I saw in these students was very impressive. So that was fun. And then I did have a chance to go over to Esperanza, and I met with a nurse there, just because I regularly over the years always brought clothes down or food or from shoes and things like that, and just had a little conversation with her about what the family's needs are, especially as we get closer to spring break. So she expressed to me that they really need, the kids need shoes, and they're looking, families need laundry detergent, soaps, and these types of things. So I haven't proposed it yet, but I've been, talking with some of the administration, and I think the nurses are a great resource for this, to maybe do a drive or reconnect. I know we all had I say we, but our schools, sorry, had sister schools where we would help the Title I school. And I'd really like to see that happen. If it's not happening, and if it is happening in some areas, what's working for that and what's not, and how we can get all of our Title I schools, if they want to be, involved in drives that we can have led by our students of the sister schools, our student governments. We can bring our high schoolers into it too to help make deliveries. I would just kind of excited about possibly getting this organized and ready to go well before spring break. I also have to say, last week I had the opportunity to meet with the district cabinet, and it was phenomenal. It was such a great experience. My brain was completely full, but by the end, but I had so many wonderful takeaways, and I wrote them down, so I don't want to miss them. A few takeaways, and I noticed these in every single meeting that I had. So if that was with a district cabinet or a cabinet member or another department head, every meeting that I had, we have amazing district staff that work extremely hard on a very small amount of staff resources. So what these leaders were telling me, what they can get done, and then finding out that they maybe had a handful of staff members was absolutely amazing to me, because in the same breath, they're saying, it's the best job I've ever had. I love going to my job every day. I'm smiling. I'm rewarded because I do it for the students. And I think it speaks volumes when your staff has been here between 20 plus, 30 plus years. So I really feel like we should be so lucky, because in my past experience with a district, mine was with a teacher and as a parent, and there's a lot that goes on to make this district run, and I think that we often take that for granted. And we have some amazing people here that are running it every single day. So I want to thank you. If you're still here, thank you. And then if you're not, then maybe pass that along. It was just a really pleasant visit. And then I also want to say that I also noticed through conversations with our leaders that everybody in their department works so well with each other, and that's probably why things flow as well as they do, because they constantly know they have someone in another department who's willing to help them as well. So, and I think that this speaks volumes from our superintendent, because I think he does a fantastic job of getting our team together, doing their work, seeing what needs to be done, getting it done. And then I was also hoping that we weren't going so late, but that everyone did have a chance to read Dr. Finch's State of the District. It's noted that we continue to lead the state in educational programming, innovation, and expertise. So that's a wonderful piece of information to read if you haven't done so already. Talks a lot about not necessarily starting over at the new year, but just continuing to grow and be best you can be, extraordinary. And then finally, I learned the other day that Clowder is a group of cats. And I know this now because I had the opportunity to attend our district spelling bee, and everybody in the audience had no idea what this word was. But in case you want to know, a Clowder is a group of cats. And the spelling bee was wonderful. It went on for over 3.5 hours, and it was nail biting at the end there, but the students did a fantastic job, and they should all be really proud of themselves. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carver.
Thank you, President Paperman. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. It's almost going to sound like I must have been stalking Mrs. Simichek, because we did a lot of the same things. But on the 11th, I also was at Barry Goldwater's, excuse me, yes, it's my birthday. I was at Barry Goldwater's Passion Project Showcase. It was amazing. Probably personally visited, well, not probably, I kept track of them and took notes. Visited with no less than 30 students, had them explain their project to me. We did a little Q&A, each one of us. as they got done with the presentation. And some of it was quite interesting. I ran into a few students who taught themselves musical instruments. That was pretty amazing. Quite a few athletes that had been injured throughout the sports year did their project on their rehab and had pictures of the process and some of the damage that was done to their body, and ran into some kids that were doing projects for their peers. There was one young man there that was establishing a crisis hotline for at-risk youth that were contemplating suicide. And so it was an amazing evening. The evening actually was really topped off by Dr. Stolk. She found me going classroom to classroom and grabbed a hold of me, and we went over to the media center and listened to some really amazing music being played on an electric guitar over there by some youth, and went over to the gym and watched our basketball team finish up. It was really amazing to have such an extended conversation with her and to see the interaction between her and her staff and her faculty, the atmosphere that she's created there of, for lack of a better word, love and inclusion. You can really see it through the children and everything. She's doing an amazing job. Also on the 11th, listened to the district interfaith council meeting that Dr. Finch held via Zoom. For those of you that don't know, it's something that he does semi-annually, where leaders of different faiths throughout the community are able to listen in to the Zoom call and kind of does a state of the district with them and lets them know where we're at and some of our accomplishments and some of our challenges. On the 16th was Martin Luther King Day, and many of you might know that that day's kind of become synonymous with a day of. So I spent that day here in the community over at OCJ Foster Kids. For those of you that is, OCJ stands for Opportunity, Community, and Justice for Kids. This is an organization that specializes in developing care packages for foster children that are left at certain facilities throughout the state. And when some of these children are picked up from emergency situations and taken to foster care, they only have the clothes on their back. So these care packages had basic hygiene gear in them and some things that they might find important to have when they start their life over in their new environment. And there was about 35 of us that showed up, and we put over 320 kits together for different ages and sexes of children. So that was pretty amazing. On the 20th, I also was able to visit with the cabinet. And I tell you what, you want to talk about some folks that wear multiple hats. You guys should be commended. You do an amazing job. You do a lot with little, and you're very blessed individuals. I believe that you're really doing the Lord's work here, working with the children, and I appreciate everything that you do and the sacrifices that you make. I wish that the world was a different place and we could give you all the tools that you needed to get everything done without you having to do so much yourself. But I really appreciate you. I appreciate the time that everybody took. It did hurt my feelings that Dr. Z was the only one that really wanted to eat my donuts. Everybody started to cleanse for the new year, and I'm not buying Lamar's anymore for you people. The 23rd, again, the spelling bee with 4th through 8th graders. It was amazing. About 50 children started, and it did take 3.5 hours. It went 18 rounds before we finally got down to our winner. And I wanted to try and pay special attention to that winning word, but these two gentlemen, they went round and round for like 6 rounds, just the two of them, and I got lost. The only thing I remembered was Clouter. You remember how to spell it? Clouter, I think, right? W. There's a W and a C. I wasn't paying very good attention, but I did learn that that's a group of cats. The 24th, met with a group called the Friends of Deer Valley Economic Development Group. They are a group of gentlemen out here in the Deer Valley area that are just trying to find ways to help the economy grow in a logical fashion out here. And their question to me, being a sitting school board member, is how could they help? What do we need? What do we want to see from economic development? And so it was a good conversation. Spent about an hour with them this morning. And then again on the 24th, got to participate in the virtual CTE advisory session and got to see the amazing work that those folks do. That meeting, that Zoom call involved people from across the valley at different levels of education. And it was amazing to see how well they work together to learn from each other. It was an extended PLC group, I think we could say. Yep. And they were doing an amazing job. Sorry I didn't turn my video on. I don't do that for anybody. But it was beautiful. So It's been a busy couple of weeks, and I've really enjoyed it. I had something else here, but like Stephanie, we're about 2 hours longer than I hoped that we would be. So share that with you some other time. Thank you for all that you guys do. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Ms. Fisher?
Uh, well, I'm just going to say ditto to some of that. I too was at Barry Goldwater, and I don't know how you can't say it. It was AC/DC that was playing. It was so good. And I'm excited to take my bulldog to the football game because she said I could bring her. But we also I did see a lot of them. I was surprised by the diversity in the projects. The kids really did pick things that were true to them. I had a young man show me juggling and how to juggle, and I also attended the young man with the sports injury and how he got himself better and what he actually was. He's sports medicine future. He's a smart kid. And then there was a young man that had hunting, and we had a long discussion about how javelina is not good eats. So do not hunt them because they're simply for mounting, and that's a waste. So, well, we did have a long conversation about about hunting and whatnot. But it was just amazing to see the diversity of the kids, and they weren't. They collaborated and supported one another. As this kid's telling you, the next one's kind of just listening, unless they have someone they're talking to. Oh yeah, he says that. Just they get real engaged with each other and excited about each other's projects. So that was really cool to see. CTE obviously has my heart for a reason. I do believe that college and career readiness. We also need to focus on that career readiness, and sometimes CTE is the path to college as well. But having that well-rounded kid and CTE is so important to industry. I love this. My second time, third, I think, in the CTE advisory. One time I did it from my driveway in my flip-flops, doing construction stuff. So you would have thought I was, advocating for our construction industry. I have received a lot of emails are insane. If I have not answered your email, I will, even if it's just to say thank you, I received it, because I am behind on emails. Full disclosure, I've just been very busy. I don't know if I missed it, but I had requested some of the P&L statements on some of our enterprise departments. If that's already been provided, maybe just direct me to what Friday update it was in. I think the two most, we have the print shop, it's not child care, but it's within that. So we actually have, and any other department that actually raises funds. I would like to see kind of what their P&L statement looks like, or whatever similar thing we have. We did get an email from someone that had concerns, and I don't know if everybody received it or just me, with how our ratios are calculated. One teacher per every 19 students, and just to have that. I am somewhat aware of how it's calculated, but I just think it would be a good thing for the board to know. I wouldn't mind if the public is aware of that as well. Because obviously we don't really have 19 students in a class, especially when some teachers are buried under, 30 students or more. So I would like some information on that, on how Deer Valley manages that, when the bubble bursts, what that looks like. I think that would be very beneficial for all board members. And the detail that goes into figuring out when that bubble is going to burst, and sometimes you have to wait a little bit. It would be a good conversation. I think there's data possibly already established for it. One of the emails we received was from a parent who is concerned about that lunchtime visits. And I thought it was kind of a little set off by the email because I've also heard parents say, hey, I can't even get anywhere near a school. My school doesn't even allow, we're not allowed. We're not allowed to be on the campus. We're not allowed to see our kids. We're not allowed to, even now after COVID's done, we're still not being allowed. And this parent's concern was that people who aren't the parents are allowed at lunchtime. So I don't know what policies surround that, but I would like is there a consistent anything across the district on this topic? Do we have a policy in place, implemented? Is it district-wide, by school? What does that look like? Because I think that's really important. We don't know, there are people who like me and there are people who hate me. I don't want someone who hates me sitting next to my kid and having lunch with them. Especially because, and obviously my kid's not in the district right now, but when he was, he had some injuries and where did they come from? And we could never figure it out. I don't know that that's the case, but I just would not want that to happen to anybody. And so I would really like to know what our policy is on that. I did receive a correspondence between a community member, not really our community member, and Dr. Finch, and response back. And he brought up some good points, on both sides. I would like to know what the cost of our advertising is. What is the overall cost, and do we take any precautions into not sending our stuff to surrounding districts? And I know that's not always possible, because I get stuff from the surrounding districts. Sometimes I think it's just because they're trying to market to get enrollment. Sometimes it's other reasons. Maybe it is just because it's by a zip code. But I would like I'd like to know what our bill actually is. What are we spending on advertising, on those flyers, on the notification? And what a lot of people don't realize, and it may be beneficial to publicly state, we do have our own print shop. And our print shop does a lot of our printing. And they do a lot of printing for other districts, which is why I'm asking for a P&L statement, because they are highly profitable as well. Correspondence. The last one, and I'm not going to go too deep into detail. The board received an email from Mrs. Finch. I will get my copy of it eventually, a year down the road or so, when my public records request is honored. I'm not going to go into detail about that because it's a waste of my time. I did bring some background materials that I'm going to give to each board member. I'll give a copy to Sheila. It's nothing that Dr. Finch is unaware of. It's correspondence between him and I, and it is the full text scope of mine and Mrs. Finch's texts. Just full disclosure. And it really doesn't matter. What does matter is, we have a lot of sayings. We have the see something, say something. We have be kind. We have all kinds of little sayings. But what we have is a practice of gaslighting. And I'm just very concerned. I think it's wonderful that the two new board members were able to meet with cabinet members. For 2 years, I've heard how every single cabinet member personally hates me and does not want to talk to me at all. So, and I don't believe them, because there's some cabinet members that I actually know quite well, and I've known them for years. And I don't believe they would ever say that. But I was concerned, when it was happening to me, when it's happened to me over the years, it's like, whatever, you know what? I give it back as good as it gets. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. You want to scrap? No problem, we'll scrap. And I'm also highly intelligent. Where I get concerned is when it comes to kids. One of the statements, and I'm going to say it here because I want it noted. One of the comments, and it's commented regularly, is about my testimony. Why do I do this? Here's the thing with people who have a testimony. They have a testimony because they had a past. And I have zero shame in saying that, Yes, I guarantee, how many of you have a teacher who impacted your life positively, came alongside you? If you ask that question in a room, especially at an educators conference or anything, there's going to be hands going up everywhere. Oh, I remember Miss So-and-so. I didn't have that. I went to too many schools. I guarantee there is Department of Defense students that also went to a lot of schools and never had that. What I did have is a teacher who I caught drinking, and that teacher said, "Don't tell." And I said, "Give me a good grade." Any 15-year-old that wouldn't say that exact same thing, they're not 15. Because when we're young, we don't make wise decisions. And if it makes anyone feel better, I am an accountant. Not only did I have to pass that algebra class, I had a whole lot of other finance and math classes that I had to pass. I hope that no one in this district believes that any student is not salvageable or is not going to be successful because of a moment in time in their life. That little girl at 15 years old who wanted a passing algebra grade not only had to pass it, but she went on to get a bachelor's with a 4.0 and a master's with a 3.85, summa cum laude and with distinction. We grow up. None of our students are a lost cause because of a moment in time. I sat there and I watched as we talked about the gifted kids, and I was just shocked when you read that page 7 and you hear about how a bored kid is all the things that they are. You know what it sounds like? What we label as troubled youth in most districts. I'm glad Deer Valley doesn't do that. And I hope that we never do. No student, no child is a waste because of a moment in time. They all have the potential to grow up and be awesome. I hope that we no longer continue the practice of gaslighting, and I want us all to take a moment to think about what that is. When you tell someone else, oh, well, somebody said that because they don't like you, or we are setting the example for the next generation to do the same thing. And it's when the kids do it and the other kid can't handle it that suicides are caused or people are destroyed. Adults are secure and they can survive it. Kids can't. So my ask is that would stop. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. It's getting late, so I'm just going to be sweet and short. Thank you for the presentation and the hard work that the cabinets have put on. The awards were great. Thank you. Also, I'm looking for transparency. Continue advocating for the teachers, students, and staff. I do have some disagreement with Dr. Finch. I went through not a great experience when I had to deal with my computer, and it took me 13 days to get it fixed, and there was no reason for that. I could not even go into my board doc to review from the previous board meeting. So this is what I'm saying. If he's saying policies that is put in place reviewed by the attorney, and this is what I'm saying, that the board needs to have consultation if I have disagreement with him. Well, this policy does not make any sense. I cannot take my computer to an IT person because of board policy. So this is what I'm trying to say, and there's other things too that I'm questioning, that the board, as president, I would like to have consultation with a separate attorney. So this is the reason why I had this put on the agenda and other reasons. Also, thank you for community members sending emails and their concerns. I'm not able to answer the emails, but I read, there's many of them. And parents, thank you for standing up for your students, for looking at the standard-based grading. I understand that this has been confusing since it started. I just hope that maybe things turn around. Maybe we'll look at survey data maybe the survey data is not going to go well. So we're going to have to make major decisions for what's best for our students and also to build relationship with our community. We need to stop with the division and also stop attacking each other. So we need to, like, for example, Mrs. Fisher said Mrs. Finch's wife. We cannot stop social media. Yeah, she does jump in, and if Ms. Fisher puts something on social media, she'll jump in. To me, I feel, you know what, just ignore it. Mrs. Fisher has her own points of view. You know, just stay, stay aside. So that way there's no conflict within the board and we don't have to hear it in every meeting. Oh, Mrs. Finch said this, and Mrs. Fisher said that. Let's move forward in a positive way with this board instead of attacking each other. Thank you. Dr. Finch, board report. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, if you have emails that come to you or come to the board, feel free to forward them to me. Then we can find out the situation and put it in a Friday update, make sure we're consistent. And I know that's pretty common nowadays to email the whole board. So that's the best way to do that. We'll get a copy there, Ms. Paperman, to you, the board policy BHC for you. Student Advisory Council, they are working on their summit. That's coming March 1st, I believe. That's where we get 300 to 400 students come in, and they'll be working on their leadership through that summit. That's a big deal. Make sure you get a chance to see that. We'll keep you informed as that gets closer. I did also find out that, I'm probably going to mess the kid's name up, Nikola Jujic. It was the winner from 8th grade at Paseo Hills. Found out today that actually English is his second language. So that's pretty amazing to be able to win an English spelling bee and you speak a different, your native language is different. So obviously a student who is interested in our language to the degree of winning our Deer Valley title, pretty amazing. No news on AEL that I can give you. Legislature still playing with that. Remember, the drop dead date is February 28th, and inaction is action. So if they don't get anything done, if it turns out to be a game of chicken and both sides blink, yes, that will be a 1.4 billion, I think is the number. That'll have the impact on us to the tune of $46 million. So obviously we want them to get that done ASAP, but I'm sure politics will play a role in that. Next week we have POP as well. That's the presidents of the PTOs. Chance to come check that out if you want to. Let Ms. Sheila know. And then our next board meeting is 3 weeks from now on Valentine's Day. So make sure you get your stuff early so you don't get in trouble. All right, that's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. Yes. Okay. Future meetings are posted. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. Have a good evening.